After my new wife brought me coffee in bed, my 7-year-old granddaughter whispered, "Grandpa, do not drink it. I saw her put something in your special jar," so I pretended to sleep. 1 hour later, I froze when I saw Camilla not checking my pulse but digging her fingernails into my arm to see if I would flinch. They thought I was losing my mind. They didn't know I was recording every breath they took. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to trust your gut when everyone else told you that you were crazy. My name is Elijah Thorne, but everyone on the construction sites used to call me Pops. I am 74 years old, and for 40 years I was the chief engineer for one of the biggest infrastructure firms in the state. I built bridges that span raging rivers and skyscrapers that defy the wind. My job was to calculate stress loads, to find the cracks before the concrete poured, and to ensure that the foundation could hold the weight of the world. I spent my life dealing with steel and stone materials that are honest. If steel is going to break, it warns you. It bends, it groans. But people are different. People smile while they are cutting the supports out from under you. For the last 3 months, I have felt like a building that has been condemned. My body, which was once capable of climbing 20 flights of stairs without losing breath, felt heavy, like I was dragging bags of wet cement around my ankles. My mind, which used to be able to calculate complex structural equations in seconds, felt like it was filled with thick gray fog. I was forgetting things, simple things, like where I put my glasses or the name of the contractor I spoke to yesterday. Or at least that is what they told me. "Good morning, my love." The voice drifted through the fog in my brain. I opened my eyes and saw Camilla standing over me. She was 45 years old, beautiful in a sharp, predatory way, and wearing a silk robe that cost more than my father made in a year. The morning sun was streaming through the curtains, catching the diamond ring on her finger. A ring I had bought her 6 months ago when we got married. A ring that I was starting to realize was not a symbol of love, but a down payment on my life. She was holding a silver tray with a single cup of steaming coffee and a plate of toast. The smell of the coffee usually woke me up, but lately the smell just made my stomach turn. It was too sweet, sickeningly sweet. "How are we feeling today, Elijah?" she asked, placing the tray on the nightstand. Her voice was like honey poured over broken glass, smooth but dangerous. I tried to sit up, but my head swam. I gripped the sheets, my knuckles turning gray against the dark skin of my hands. "I feel tired, Camilla," I rasped. My throat felt dry, like I had swallowed dust. "Just tired." She sighed a long, dramatic exhale that was meant to make me feel guilty for being a burden. "Of course you are tired, sweetie. The doctor said this is part of the progression. You had a bad night again. You were talking in your sleep, screaming about falling bridges. It was scary." I looked at her, trying to find the lie in her eyes. I didn't remember dreaming about bridges. I didn't remember dreaming at all. I just remembered darkness. Heavy, suffocating darkness. "Here," she said, lifting the cup. "Drink your coffee. I made it just the way you like it, with 3 spoons of sugar from your special jar. It will give you energy." She brought the cup to my lips. The steam rose up and I smelled something underneath the roast of the beans, something chemical, like bitter almonds masked by an overdose of vanilla. Just as I opened my mouth to take a sip, the landline phone in the hallway rang. It was a shrill, piercing sound that made Camilla jump. She looked at the door, annoyed. "Who is calling at this hour?" she muttered, setting the cup down on the nightstand with a little too much force. "Probably that incompetent nurse agency again. Don't touch that coffee until it cools down, Elijah. I don't want you burning yourself and making a mess like yesterday." She turned on her heel and walked out of the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I heard her footsteps fading down the hallway, followed by the murmur of her voice answering the phone. I lay back against the pillows, closing my eyes, willing the room to stop spinning. I felt useless. I felt like a rusty bolt waiting to be sheared off. "Grandpa." The whisper was so soft I thought I had imagined it. It sounded like the wind. "Grandpa, are you awake?" I opened my eyes and looked around the room. It was empty. Then I saw a movement near the floor. A tuft of curly hair poked out from under the heavy oak bed frame, then a pair of big brown eyes, then a small nose. It was Chloe, my granddaughter, my son Darius's daughter. She was 8 years old, smart as a whip, and the only person in this house who didn't look at me like I was a walking ATM machine. She crawled out from under the bed, dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit. She was wearing her pajamas with the little astronauts on them. "Chloe," I whispered, trying to smile. "What are you doing under there, little bit? Were you playing hide and seek again?" She didn't smile back. Her face was serious, too serious for an 8-year-old. She stood up and walked to the side of the bed, moving quietly on her tiptoes. She looked at the closed door. Then she looked at the cup of coffee on the nightstand. "Don't drink it, Grandpa," she whispered, leaning close to my ear. I frowned. "Why not, baby? Is it too hot?" She shook her head vigorously. Her curls bounced. Number 1. I saw her. I was in the kitchen getting juice. She didn't see me. She took the sugar jar. The blue one with the flowers that only you use. I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My special jar. I had a ceramic jar of raw cane sugar that I kept on the top shelf. Nobody else used it because Camilla claimed raw sugar made her gain weight, and my son Darius only drank energy drinks. "What did you see, Chloe?" I asked, my voice suddenly sharp, losing the rasp of sickness. She pulled a small packet out of her pocket. "It was a blue powder. I saw her pour a bag of blue powder into your sugar jar. She stirred it up really fast. Then she made your coffee." She smiled, Grandpa. But it was a scary smile. Like the wolf in the storybook. I looked at the innocent face of my granddaughter. Children see things. Adults filter the world through logic and denial, but children just see what is there. Chloe had no reason to lie. And suddenly the fog in my brain cleared just a fraction. Blue powder. I looked at the coffee. It looked normal. It smelled almost normal. But for the last 3 months, ever since Camilla took over the kitchen, I had been getting worse. The fatigue, the confusion, the muscle weakness. It wasn't old age. It wasn't dementia. It was chemistry. I sat up. The adrenaline of the engineer kicked in. When you find a structural flaw, you don't ignore it. You fix it or you evacuate. "Chloe," I said, gripping her small hand, "you are a brave girl. You are the best spy in the world. Now I need you to go back to your room. Can you do that for me?" "But Grandpa, she worries me." "I know, baby. But I need you to be safe. Go. Now." She hugged me quickly, then scurried out of the room, closing the door silently behind her. I was alone with the coffee. I picked up the cup. My hand was shaking, but not from weakness this time. From rage. I had built a life on honesty. I had provided for my family. I had brought Camilla into this house, gave her a roof over her head and a credit card with no limit. And this was my repayment. A slow poison in a ceramic mug. I couldn't dump it in the bathroom. She would hear the toilet flush. I couldn't dump it in the sink. She might see the stain. I looked at the large potted plant in the corner of the room. It was a snake plant, also known as mother-in-law's tongue. A tough plant, hard to kill, just like me. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, fighting the dizziness. I stumbled 2 steps to the plant and poured the dark liquid into the soil. The earth drank it up greedily. I waited for the last drop to fall, then I stumbled back to bed. I placed the empty cup back on the tray. I lay back down and pulled the covers up to my chin. I arranged my face. I relaxed my jaw. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I slowed my breathing. I became the old, sick man they wanted me to be. 5 minutes later, the door handle turned. Camilla walked back in. She looked annoyed. "Sorry about that." "Elijah, it was just a wrong number." She lied. She looked at the tray. Her eyes lit up when she saw the empty cup. "Good boy," she cooed. "You drank it all. That is my big, strong man." I didn't answer. I kept my breathing shallow and rhythmic. "Elijah," she asked, stepping closer. I let out a soft, snoring sound. She stood over me. I could feel her presence like a shadow blocking out the sun. I could smell her perfume. It was overpowering. She leaned down. "Elijah, can you hear me?" I didn't move a muscle. I had spent hours inspecting welding joints in freezing temperatures without moving. I knew how to be still. Then I felt it. It wasn't a gentle touch. It wasn't a check for a fever. Her fingers clamped onto the soft flesh of my upper arm, her nails manicured and sharp dug deep into my skin. She didn't just pinch me, she twisted. It was a vicious, cruel action. It was a test of pain. She wanted to see if the drugs had worked. She wanted to see if I was paralyzed enough to ignore physical agony. The pain was sharp and hot. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and slap her across the face with the hand she was torturing. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. But I forced my body to be a stone. I forced my mind to go to a different place, to a bridge I built in 1998, focusing on the rivets, focusing on the steel, focusing on anything but the woman who was hurting me. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I just lay there, letting her hurt me. Finally, she let go. "He is out," she whispered to herself. I heard the rustle of fabric. I cracked my right eye open just a fraction, just enough to see through the screen of my eyelashes. Camilla wasn't checking my pulse. She wasn't fixing my pillows. She had walked to my desk in the corner of the room. She opened a folder she had brought in with her. She pulled out a document. I recognized the letterhead. It was my living trust, the document that controlled my assets, my bank accounts, and the deed to this house. She pulled a pen from her pocket. She laid the document on the desk. And then, right there in front of my sleeping form, she began to practice. She moved her hand in loops and curves, mimicking the signature I had spent a lifetime perfecting. She was stealing my name. And as I watched her forge my life away, I realized that the sickness wasn't in my body. The sickness was in my house, and I had to cure it before it killed me. I closed my eye. I let the darkness take me. But this time it wasn't the darkness of the drug. It was the darkness of a plan forming, a plan that would require every ounce of strength I had left. "You want a vegetable, Camilla?" I thought as she signed my name with a flourish. "Fine, I will be a vegetable. But you are about to find out that some roots go deep, and when you pull them up, you might just bring the whole house down on top of your head." As soon as the front door clicked shut behind Camilla, I threw the covers off. My body felt heavy, like I was moving through water, but my mind was sharp. It was the engineer in me waking up. For 40 years, I didn't guess about structural integrity. I tested it, and I was about to test the foundation of my own marriage. I moved to the nightstand. My hands were trembling, but I forced them to be steady. I picked up the ceramic sugar jar. It was blue with hand-painted daisies, a gift from my late wife Sarah 30 years ago. It was the only thing on the tray that felt like it belonged to me. I took it into the bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the bright vanity lights, the ones that show every wrinkle and every gray hair. I poured a small amount of the sugar onto a piece of black construction paper I had grabbed from Chloe's art supply bin in the hallway. White crystals scattered across the black paper. To the naked eye, it looked like sugar. But I pulled a magnifying glass from the drawer, the one I used to read the fine print on blueprints. I leaned in close. There it was. Mixed in with the jagged, irregular crystals of the raw cane sugar were smaller, finer particles. They were a pale, almost invisible blue. I wetted the tip of my pinky finger and pressed it against one of the blue specks. I touched it to the tip of my tongue. It didn't taste sweet. It tasted metallic, bitter, and within 10 seconds the tip of my tongue went numb. I spit it into the sink and rinsed my mouth out with water, scrubbing my tongue with a washcloth until it was raw. I knew that taste. Years ago on a job site, a worker had been injured and given a powerful muscle relaxant and sedative cocktail. He had crushed the pills into his coffee to make them work faster. He had offered me a sip, and that same metallic numbness had hit me. This wasn't just sugar, it was a chemical straitjacket. They were drugging me. Not enough to kill me, but enough to make me slow. Enough to make me slur my words. Enough to make me look like a confused old man who belonged in a home. I scraped the sample into a small plastic bag and hid it inside the hollow curtain rod above the shower. A hiding spot I had designed myself years ago for spare cash. Then I poured the rest of the sugar back into the jar and returned it to the nightstand. I had the evidence. Now I needed a plan. But before I could formulate one, I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Then voices, loud, intrusive voices that shattered the quiet of the house. It was my son Darius and his wife Skylar. I looked at the clock. It was 5 in the afternoon. They weren't due for Sunday dinner until tomorrow. This was an ambush. I walked out to the living room trying to keep my back straight, trying to hide the limp that the drugs were forcing on me. Skylar was already in the kitchen opening cabinets like she owned the place. She was a tall woman with blonde hair that was sprayed so stiff it wouldn't move in a hurricane. She wore a sharp blazer and a smile that never reached her eyes. Darius trailed behind her, looking tired and defeated, holding a casserole dish. "Dad," Skylar exclaimed, her voice pitching up an octave. "You are up. Camilla said you were having a bad day. We brought dinner." She didn't hug me. She just gestured to the table. Darius looked at me. He was 40 years old, but he still looked like the boy who used to hide behind my legs when it thundered. He had my eyes, but he didn't have my backbone. Skylar carried his spine in her designer purse. "Hey, Pops," Darius said quietly, avoiding my gaze. "How are you feeling?" "I feel fine, son," I said, my voice steady. "Why are you all here a day early?" Skylar laughed a dry, brittle sound. "Oh, Elijah, you are confused again. Today is Sunday. We called you this morning, remember? You said you were excited for the meatloaf." I froze. I knew today was Saturday. The mailman had come. The football game was on TV. "It is Saturday, Skylar," I said. She exchanged a look with Darius, a look of pity, a look that said, "See, I told you so." "Honey," she said to Darius, patting his arm, "don't correct him. The doctor said it upsets him." Darius looked at the floor. "Okay, Sky, they were doing it right in front of my face. They were rewriting reality." We sat down to eat. Camilla had returned her shopping bags hidden away, and she played the role of the doting wife perfectly. She cut my meatloaf into small pieces as if I were a child. "Here, sweetie," she said, placing the fork in my hand. "Eat up. You need your strength." I looked at the food. I looked at their faces. I felt like a prisoner at my own table. So Dad, Skylar said, taking a sip of wine, "Have you had any more episodes?" I put my fork down. "What episodes?" Camilla reached over and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was cold. "Elijah, don't you remember yesterday?" she said softly. "You were screaming in the backyard. You thought the oak tree was a man trying to break in. You called the police. We had to apologize to the officers." I stared at her. That never happened. I had spent yesterday reading in the study. "That is a lie," I said, my voice rising. "I didn't call anyone. I was reading my book." Skylar sighed, shaking her head. "See, Darius, this is exactly what Dr. Roberts warned us about. The paranoia, the gaps in memory. He creates a false reality to protect himself." Darius looked up, his eyes wet. "Pops, is it true? Did you really think the tree was a burglar?" "No, Darius." I slammed my hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "They are lying to you. I am perfectly sane. I am the man who calculated the load-bearing capacity of the Bay Bridge. Do you think I can't tell the difference between a tree and a man?" Skylar put her fork down with a clatter. Her face hardened. "It is not about intelligence, Elijah," she said, cold and sharp. "It is about decline. You are sick. You are forgetting things. Yesterday it was the tree. This morning Camilla couldn't find her jewelry. And last week—" "Where is your wallet, Elijah?" I blinked. My wallet. It was in my back pocket. It was always in my back pocket. I reached back. Empty. My heart skipped a beat. I checked my other pocket. Empty. I patted my shirt pocket. Nothing. "I just had it," I stammered. "I had it this morning." I gave Chloe $5 for the ice cream truck. Skylar raised an eyebrow. "The ice cream truck doesn't come in November, Elijah." "See? You are confusing seasons now." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "I know I have my wallet." I put it on the dresser. I ran to the bedroom. They followed me like a pack of wolves smelling blood. I tore through the dresser drawers. I checked the nightstand. I checked the bathroom counter. It was gone. Panic started to rise in my chest. Not the panic of losing money, but the panic of losing credibility. If I couldn't find my wallet, I couldn't prove I was organized. If I couldn't prove I was organized, I couldn't prove I was sane. "Maybe you put it somewhere safe," Darius suggested, his voice trembling. "You know how you get when you are worried about thieves. I didn't hide it. I yelled. Someone took it." Skylar leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms. "Or maybe you put it in the freezer again, like you did with the TV remote last month." "I never put a remote in the freezer," I snapped. "Just check Elijah," she said, challenging me. "Humor us." I walked past them to the kitchen. My legs felt heavy. The drug residue from the sugar earlier was starting to wear off, but the emotional exhaustion was taking its place. I walked to the stainless steel refrigerator. I grabbed the handle. "Please, God, let it be empty," I prayed. I pulled the door open. The cold air hit my face, and there it was. Sitting right next to the carton of milk on the middle shelf was my worn brown leather wallet. I stared at it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I hadn't put it there. I knew I hadn't. I had been nowhere near the fridge today, but there it sat. An undeniable physical object testifying against my sanity. Darius gasped behind me. "Oh, Pops," he whispered. I turned around. I saw the look on my son's face. It wasn't anger, it wasn't malice, it was pure heartbreak. He was looking at his father, the hero, the engineer, the rock of the family, and he was seeing a broken, senile old man. He believes them, I thought. The realization hit me harder than a wrecking ball. He actually believes I put it there. No, I said, holding up the wallet. Darius, listen to me. Skylar put this here. Or Camilla. One of them did it while I was in the bathroom. They are trying to trick you. Darius stepped back, shaking his head. Why would they do that, Pops? Why would Skylar hide your wallet? She loves you. She is trying to help. She is trying to steal the house, I shouted, pointing a finger at Skylar. She wants the power of attorney. Can't you see it? Skylar started to cry. Fake theatrical tears. I try so hard, she sobbed, burying her face in Darius's shoulder. I cook for him. I clean for him. And he accuses me of being a thief. I can't take this anymore, Darius. He is dangerous. What if next time he leaves the gas on? What if he hurts Chloe? That was the final nail, the mention of Chloe. Darius hugged his wife, looking at me with a hardening expression. That is enough, Pops, he said, his voice firm for the first time. Skylar is right. We can't ignore this anymore. We need to talk about assisted living. We need to talk about legal guardianship, for your own safety. I stood there in my kitchen holding my cold wallet while my family discussed stripping me of my freedom. I looked at Camilla. She was standing in the corner, quiet, watchful. She caught my eye, and just for a second the mask slipped. She winked, a tiny, almost imperceptible wink. It was a victory lap. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I realized in that moment that shouting the truth made me look crazy. If I wanted to survive this, if I wanted to save my house and my dignity, I had to stop acting like a victim. I had to start acting like an engineer. I lowered my hand. I took a deep breath. Maybe you are right, son, I said softly, lowering my head in mock defeat. Maybe I am confused. I am sorry, Skylar. I didn't mean to yell. Darius exhaled, relieved. It is okay, Pops. We will figure this out. I watched them herd me back to the living room like a lost sheep, but inside my mind was racing. They had won the battle of the wallet, but they had revealed their strategy. They were relying on my emotional reaction. They needed me to be angry and paranoid, so I would be calm. I would be compliant. I would wait. And while they planned my funeral, I would be planning their downfall. I looked at the fridge one last time. They thought they had frozen my assets, but they had just lit a fire under the one man who knew how to burn them down. The house had transformed. It was no longer the home I had purchased with 40 years of sweat and calculations. It was a correctional facility, and I was inmate number 1. After the incident with the wallet, Camilla tightened the noose. She walked into the living room on Sunday evening with a plastic basket. She was smiling that same terrifying manufactured smile that she wore like a mask. Elijah, honey, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We need to talk about your phone. Dr. Roberts thinks the blue light is overstimulating your brain. It is causing the agitation. It is making you imagine things. She didn't ask. She just reached out and took my smartphone from the end table. My connection to the outside world. My access to my bank apps. My lifeline. I reached for it, but my hand was slow. The sedatives from the morning coffee were still swimming in my blood, making my limbs feel like they were submerged in molasses. I need that for emergencies. Camilla, I said, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. She patted my hand condescendingly. I am your emergency contact, sweetie. If anything happens, I am right here. You just rest. No more screens, no more stress. She walked away, dropping my phone into her pocket. Just like that, I was cut off. I sat in my armchair, staring at the blank television screen. I felt a structural failure imminent. A collapse of the spirit. They were isolating me, shrinking my world until it was just the 4 walls of this room and the lies they fed me. But they forgot one thing. An engineer always has a backup system, a redundancy. I waited until Tuesday. Camilla had a routine. At 2 in the afternoon, she would go into the sunroom to paint her nails and watch soap operas with her headphones on. It was a 45-minute window of negligence. I heard the door to the sunroom click shut. I waited 5 minutes. Then I tapped my cane on the floor 3 times. It was the signal. A moment later, Chloe appeared in the doorway. She wasn't carrying a doll today. She was carrying a notebook and a pencil, looking very serious. She knew something was wrong. Children are like seismographs. They feel the tremors before the earthquake hits. Grandpa, she whispered, is the coast clear? I nodded, waving her over. Come here, Agent Chloe. We have a mission. She scrambled up onto the ottoman in front of my chair. Her eyes were wide. She treated this like a game, but I could see the fear behind the excitement. She knew the lady of the house was dangerous. I leaned in close, speaking in a hushed tone. Listen carefully, Chloe. Do you remember the red toolbox in the basement? The one with the rusty latch? She nodded. The one under the workbench. You told me never to touch it because it has sharp saws. I smiled. Smart girl. But today I need you to touch it. There are no saws in there anymore. I took them out years ago, but there is a false bottom. Do you know what that is? She shook her head. It means there is a secret compartment underneath the screwdrivers. I explained, using my hands to demonstrate. You have to lift the metal tray out. Underneath, wrapped in an old oily rag, is a phone. It is not like the new phones. It is a brick, an old Nokia. It is gray and heavy. I paused, checking the hallway to make sure the shadow of my wife hadn't appeared. I need you to go down there, Chloe. Quiet as a mouse. Get the phone and bring it to me. Can you do that? She bit her lip. The basement is scary, Grandpa. It is dark, and Camilla said I am not allowed down there. I reached out and cupped her small face in my hands. Her skin was warm and soft, so different from the cold calculation of the adults in this house. I know it is scary, baby, but I am counting on you. You are my eyes and ears. You are the structural support of this whole operation. If we get that phone, we can call for help. We can fix everything. She took a deep breath, puffing out her chest. Like a spy movie. Exactly, I said. Like a spy movie. Operation Bluebird. Go. She slid off the ottoman and crept into the hallway. I watched her disappear around the corner towards the kitchen where the basement door was located. Then the waiting began. Time moves differently when you are waiting for a child to commit a heist in your own home. Every second felt like an hour. I counted the ticks of the grandfather clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each sound was a hammer hitting a nail. I heard the faint creak of the basement door opening. Good, she was in. I strained my ears. I listened for the footsteps on the wooden stairs. I listened for the sound of the toolbox latch. But all I heard was the drone of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of the television from the sunroom. Please be careful, I prayed silently. Please don't drop anything. 5 minutes passed. 10. Why was she taking so long? The latch was rusty. Maybe she couldn't open it. Maybe the tray was too heavy for her small arms. Then I heard it. The sound of the sunroom door opening. Panic surged through me, colder than ice water. Camilla was moving early. Her show must have ended, or she needed a refill on her iced tea. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to push myself up. My legs trembled. I had to intercept her. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. She was heading for the kitchen. And at that exact moment, I heard the basement door creak again. Chloe was coming up. They were going to collide. I forced myself to stand, using the cane to leverage my weight. I shuffled as fast as I could towards the kitchen archway. I was too late. Camilla walked into the kitchen just as Chloe was stepping out of the basement door, her hands hidden behind her back. Camilla stopped. Her eyes narrowed instantly, the predator spotting movement. Well, well, she said, her voice sharp. What do we have here? I thought I told you the basement was off limits, young lady. Chloe froze. She backed up against the refrigerator, looking tiny and terrified. I was just looking for my ball, Chloe stammered. Camilla took a step closer, towering over the child. In the dark, without a flashlight. Do not lie to me, Chloe. I hate liars. She reached out a hand. Her nails were painted a blood red. What is behind your back? Show me. Chloe shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Nothing. Show me, Camilla hissed, losing her facade of sweetness. She lunged forward, grabbing Chloe's shoulder. I stood in the doorway, watching my granddaughter about to be caught with the contraband that could save my life. If Camilla found that phone, the game was over. She would know I was plotting. She would increase the drugs. She might even send Chloe away. I had to act. I couldn't fight her physically. I was an old man with a cane against a woman in her prime. But I had one weapon left. The narrative they had built. They said I was crazy. They said I was hallucinating. Fine, I would give them a show. I let out a guttural scream, a sound of pure terror that tore from my throat and echoed off the kitchen tiles. The walls, I screamed, swinging my cane wildly into the air. The walls are cracking. Run! Run before the roof comes down. Camilla spun around, releasing Chloe. She looked at me in shock. Elijah, what in God's name? It is collapsing! I yelled, my eyes wide, staring at the perfectly sturdy ceiling. I can hear the rivets popping. Get out! Get out now! I swung the cane again, and this time I aimed for the counter. I swept a row of glass spice jars onto the floor. They shattered with a spectacular crash, paprika and cinnamon exploding into the air like dust from a demolition. Camilla shrieked, shielding her face. Elijah, stop it. Stop it right now. She ran towards me, forgetting the child in the corner. Her priority was controlling the madman. You are having an episode, she yelled, grabbing my arm, trying to wrestle the cane from my grip. There are no cracks. The house is fine. Look at me. Look at me. I fought her weakly, letting my body go limp, creating dead weight. I kept muttering about sheer force and tensile strength, drooling a little for effect. While she was struggling to hold me up, while she was distracted by the chaos of broken glass and spices, I looked over her shoulder. Chloe was staring at me. She understood. I blinked once, a slow, deliberate blink. She nodded. She clutched the heavy object behind her back and bolted. She ran past us, slipping quietly out of the kitchen and up the back stairs towards her bedroom. Safe. Once I heard her bedroom door close upstairs, I let the fight drain out of me. I slumped against the kitchen island, breathing hard. The performance had exhausted what little energy I had. Camilla pushed me back, holding me by the shoulders. Her face was flushed with anger, but also satisfaction. She had just witnessed exactly what she wanted to see. A senile old man losing his mind. You see, she hissed, shaking me slightly. This is why you can't have the phone. This is why you can't be trusted. You are dangerous, Elijah. Look at this mess. I looked down at the broken glass and the spilled spices. It looked like a disaster. But to me, it looked like a victory. I am sorry, I whispered, playing the part. I thought I heard the beams breaking. She sighed, smoothing her hair. There are no beams breaking, you old fool. It is all in your head. Now sit down. I have to clean this up before Darius gets home. If he sees this, he will put you in a home tonight. She shoved me onto a kitchen stool and went to get the broom. I sat there watching her sweep. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange sense of calm. Let her think I was crazy. Let her think the house was falling down. Later that night after dinner, Camilla gave me my special coffee. I poured it into the potted plant again when she went to the bathroom. I lay in bed waiting. At 10 o'clock, the door opened a crack. A small shadow crept into the room. Chloe. She didn't say a word. She tiptoed to the side of the bed. She reached under her pajama shirt and pulled out the Nokia 3310. It was heavy, cool to the touch, and smelled of oil and metal. The smell of work. The smell of freedom. She pressed it into my hand and closed my fingers around it. It still turns on, Grandpa, she whispered. I checked. The battery has 2 bars. I squeezed her hand. You did good, Agent Chloe. You did good. She kissed my cheek and disappeared back into the darkness. I slid the phone under my mattress deep in the center where no one would feel it. I lay back, staring at the ceiling. They had taken my smartphone, they had taken my wallet, they had taken my dignity, but they had forgotten to check the toolbox. And now the engineer had a line to the outside world. I wasn't just an inmate anymore, I was the leader of a resistance, and my army was one 8-year-old girl with a heart of steel. The counterattack was about to begin. On Wednesday morning, the atmosphere in my house shifted from a prison to a theater. Camilla came into my room not with breakfast, but with a suit. It was my favorite navy blue suit, the one I wore to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Engineering Guild 5 years ago. She laid it on the bed with a reverence that felt mocking. We have a guest coming today, Elijah, she said, smoothing the lapels. A very special doctor. He is a specialist in geriatric cognitive decline. Dr. Roberts. He is doing us a huge favor by making a house call. I sat up slowly. The fog in my head was still there, a lingering haze from the coffee 2 days ago, but the adrenaline of my secret alliance with Chloe was keeping me sharp. I looked at the suit. It hung loosely on my frame now. I had lost 10 pounds in a month. I don't need a specialist. Camilla, I said, my voice raspy. I need real food. I need fresh air. I need my son to look me in the eye. She ignored me, pulling a tie from the rack. Dr. Roberts is the best in the state. Skylar recommended him. She says he worked miracles with her aunt. Now get dressed. Darius is coming over. We want you to look presentable when we discuss your future. The name Skylar set off alarm bells in my head. If Skylar recommended him, this wasn't a medical consultation. It was an execution. An hour later, I was sitting in the high-backed armchair in the living room, dressed in my suit, feeling like a prop in a play. Darius sat on the sofa, wringing his hands, looking everywhere except at me. Skylar stood by the window, checking her watch, impatient. Camilla paced the floor, playing the role of the worried wife to perfection. The doorbell rang. Camilla rushed to answer it. A moment later, she returned with a man who looked less like a doctor and more like a used car salesman. He was tall, with slicked-back hair that smelled of cheap gel and a suit that was too shiny under the living room lights. He carried a leather briefcase, but he held it awkwardly, not like a man used to carrying medical records, but like a man used to carrying cash. "Mr. Thorne," he said, extending a hand that was damp with sweat. "I am Dr. Roberts. It is a pleasure to finally meet you. I have heard so much about you." I didn't shake his hand. I looked at him. I studied him with the eyes of an engineer inspecting a faulty beam. There was something familiar about him. The way his eyes darted around the room, assessing the value of the paintings and the furniture, the way he smiled with his mouth but not his eyes. "I have seen you before," I said quietly. Dr. Roberts laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "I doubt that, Mr. Thorne. I practice in the city. Perhaps you have seen my photo in the medical journals." "No," I insisted, leaning forward. "I never forget a face. I know you." Skylar stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. "Dad, please, don't be rude. Dr. Roberts is here to help. You are confused again." The doctor sat down opposite me. He pulled out a pen and a notepad. He didn't take my blood pressure. He didn't listen to my heart. He didn't look into my eyes with a light. "Let's start with some simple questions, Elijah," he said. "Can you tell me what year it is?" "It is 2024, I said instantly. "Good. And who is the president?" I answered correctly. "Good. Now count backward from 100 by sevens. 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. I rattled the numbers off faster than he could write them down. I saw a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. He wasn't looking for right answers. He was looking for hesitation. He was looking for a crack he could pry open. He changed tactics. He pulled a sheet of paper from his briefcase. It had a drawing of a clock on it. "Draw the hands to show 10 past 11, he ordered. I took the pen. My hand trembled slightly, a side effect of the drugs I had ingested earlier in the week. I drew the hands perfectly. He frowned. He leaned back, tapping the pen against his chin. "Mr. Thorne, tell me about the trees," he asked suddenly. "What trees?" "The trees in the backyard. The ones you believe are people. The ones you scream at." I gripped the arms of the chair. "I never screamed at trees." "That is a lie they told you." Dr. Roberts nodded, scribbling furiously on his pad. "Agitation, paranoia, denial of observed behavior. Typical." He looked at Darius. "You see, Darius, patients with this level of cognitive decline often develop a sophisticated mask. They can perform rote tasks like math because those pathways are old. But their reality testing is shattered. He answers the math questions correctly not because he is lucid, but because his brain is frantically overcompensating to hide the decay. It is called the sunset effect." Darius let out a sob. He buried his face in his hands. I stood up. I couldn't listen to this anymore. "This is a sham," I shouted, pointing a shaking finger at the doctor. "You aren't examining me. You are auditing me. Who paid you? Was it Skylar? Was it Camilla?" Dr. Roberts didn't flinch. He just looked at Darius with a sad, sympathetic expression. "You see the aggression," he said softly. "The sudden mood swings. The conspiracy theories. It is classic stage 2 Alzheimer's rapidly progressing towards stage 3. I am afraid he is no longer capable of making legal or financial decisions." Darius looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Are you sure, doctor? He seems so sharp sometimes." "It is an illusion, son," the doctor said, closing his briefcase. "A dangerous illusion. If you leave him in charge of his own affairs, he will be destitute in 6 months. Or worse, he will hurt himself." I stared at the doctor, and then it hit me, like a bolt of lightning illuminating a dark room. The wedding, Darius and Skylar's wedding 5 years ago, the open bar, the man in the cheap tuxedo who had gotten drunk and tried to sell me a timeshare in Florida. He hadn't been a doctor then. He had been a struggling insurance adjuster. "You are Rob," I whispered. The room went deadly silent. Skylar froze. "You are Rob," I said louder, my voice gaining strength. "Skylar's cousin. From the mother's side. You threw up in the punch bowl at the reception. You aren't a neurologist. You sell flood insurance." Skylar's face turned white. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "Dad, stop it!" she screamed. "You are hallucinating again. This is Dr. Roberts. He is a board-certified specialist." I looked at him. I saw the panic in his eyes. I had him. "Show me your medical license," I challenged. "Show me your ID, right now." Dr. Roberts stood up quickly, clutching his briefcase to his chest. "This environment is too volatile," he stammered, backing toward the hallway. "I cannot conduct an assessment under these conditions. I will mail my official report. Darius Schuyler." "I strongly recommend immediate power of attorney. He is worse than you described." He turned and practically ran toward the front door. Camilla followed him, her face a mask of fury. Schuyler stayed behind, blocking my path to Darius. "Dad, sit down," Schuyler ordered. "You are embarrassing us. You are scaring Darius." "I am scaring him because I am telling the truth," I yelled. "Darius, look at me. That man is her cousin. Don't you remember him?" Darius looked at me, then he looked at his wife. He looked lost. He looked weak. I don't remember all your cousins, Sky," he whispered. Schuyler grabbed Darius's face, forcing him to look at her. "My cousin Rob is in jail in Ohio." "Darius," she lied smoothly. "This is Dr. Roberts. He saved my aunt's life. Do you trust your father who thinks trees are people, or do you trust your wife?" Darius slumped. "I trust you, Sky." I sank back into the chair, defeated. They had an answer for everything. They had paved over the truth so thickly that my son couldn't find the road anymore. Camilla came back into the room. Her chest was heaving. "The doctor is gone," she said, cold as ice. "He was very upset. He said we need to increase the medication immediately to stabilize his mood." I watched them, the three of them, my wife, my son, my daughter-in-law. They were a tribunal and I was the prisoner. "I need to go to the bathroom," I mumbled, forcing myself to sound broken. Camilla rolled her eyes. "Go ahead, but don't take too long. It is time for your afternoon nap." I shuffled down the hallway, leaning heavily on my cane. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet to cover the sound. Then I pulled the Nokia phone from its hiding place inside the hollow toilet paper holder. I didn't stay in the bathroom. I cracked the door open just a sliver. The bathroom was close to the front foyer where I knew Camilla and the doctor had stood talking before he left. I hoped they were still whispering. I crept out of the bathroom, moving silently in my socks. I saw them. Camilla was at the front door, which was cracked open. Dr. Roberts, or Rob, was standing on the porch. Schuyler had joined them. I pressed myself against the wall, holding the phone up. I navigated to the voice memo function with trembling thumbs. It was old technology, but it worked. I pressed record. "You have to fix this, Rob," I heard Schuyler hiss. "He recognized you." "He is lucid, Schuyler," the man whispered, his voice shaking. "You told me he was a vegetable. He remembered the punch bowl. If he talks to anyone—" "He won't talk to anyone," Camilla interrupted, her voice low and lethal. "Because starting tonight, he won't be able to form a sentence." "What are you going to do?" the man asked. "Double the dose," Camilla said. "Maybe triple. Just write the report, Rob. Declare him incompetent. We need that signature on the deed transfer by the end of the month. If we don't sell this house before the market dips, Schuyler's company goes under, and we all go to jail for the loan fraud." I held the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Loan fraud. So that was it. It wasn't just greed. It was desperation. They were drowning and they were using my body as a raft. "Just get it done," Schuyler said. "And Rob, send the bill to the estate account. We will pay you $10,000 as agreed." I stopped recording. I saved the file. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a sledgehammer. I had it. I had the confession. I had the conspiracy. But I couldn't use it yet. If I walked out there now and played it, they would just take the phone. They would overpower me. I was one old man against three desperate criminals. I slipped back into the bathroom. I flushed the toilet. I hid the phone back in the holder. I looked at myself in the mirror. The man looking back at me was tired. His suit hung off his shoulders. His eyes were rimmed with red. But there was something new in those eyes. The engineer was back. I walked out of the bathroom, shuffling my feet, letting my mouth hang open slightly. Camilla was waiting in the hallway, holding a glass of water and a blue pill. "Here, sweetie," she said, smiling that wolfish smile. "Dr. Roberts said this will help you sleep." I took the pill. I put it in my mouth. I took a sip of water. I made a show of swallowing, bobbing my Adam's apple. "Good boy," she said, patting my cheek. "Now go to bed." I walked to my room. As soon as the door closed, I spit the pill into a tissue. I didn't sleep that afternoon. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mapping out the load-bearing walls of their conspiracy. They wanted a signature by the end of the month. That gave me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to turn this house of cards into a fortress. 2 weeks to save my son from the women who were eating him alive. I reached under the mattress and touched the cold, hard plastic of the phone. "You want a signature?" I whispered to the empty room. "I will give you a signature, but it is going to cost you a lot more than $10,000. The house fell silent at exactly 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. The front door clicked shut, and I heard the purr of Camilla's Mercedes engine fading down the driveway. She was going to the spa. A full-day package of massages and facials that cost more than my father made in a month of laying bricks. She told me she needed it. She told me caring for a sick husband was exhausting work. She kissed my forehead with lips that tasted of expensive gloss and told me to be a good boy and stay in bed until she got back. I waited. I counted to 100, slowly breathing in the silence. Then I counted to 100 again. I had to be sure. Paranoia is just another word for preparedness when you are living in a nest of vipers. When I was certain she was gone, I threw off the heavy duvet. My legs were stiff. The muscle atrophy from weeks of inactivity and the chemical cocktail she was feeding me was real. But pain is just a signal. It is just data. And today, I chose to ignore the data. I rolled out of bed and hit the floor with a thud. I crawled to the mattress, lifting the corner with a grunt of exertion. There it was, the gray Nokia phone, my lifeline, my weapon. I pressed the power button. The little green screen flickered to life. 2 bars of battery. It was enough. I sat on the floor, my back against the bed frame, clutching the phone like it was a holy relic. I didn't try to text. My thumbs were too shaky and the buttons were too small. I dialed a number I had memorized 30 years ago. The direct line to the Priority Wealth Management Division of First National Bank. It rang once, twice, then a robotic voice answered. "Welcome to First National. Please enter your account number." I punched in the digits. My fingers remembered the pattern even if my brain felt foggy. "Please enter your PIN." I entered the code. It was the birthday of my late wife, Sarah, a date no one in this house cared to remember. There was a pause, a moment of digital silence that felt like it lasted a lifetime. Then the voice returned, devoid of emotion, cold and mathematical. "Current balance on checking account ending in 409 is $2,400.50. My breath hitched in my chest. 2,000. That couldn't be right. That account was supposed to have over $500,000 in it. It was my liquid retirement fund. The money I had set aside for medical emergencies, for home repairs, for Chloe's college tuition. I pressed the button to repeat the message. $2,400.50. I felt a phantom pain in my chest, tight and crushing. It wasn't a heart attack. It was the feeling of 50 years of labor evaporating into thin air. I had built bridges in freezing rain. I had inspected tunnels while standing in knee-deep mud. I had missed birthdays and anniversaries to earn that money. And now it was gone. I pressed 0. I needed a human. I needed to scream at someone. Connecting to an agent. Music started to play. Generic classical music. It sounded like a funeral march. After 3 minutes, a voice came on the line. "Mr. Thorne, this is James. It is good to hear your voice, sir. We haven't heard from you in months." James was a good man. I had helped his father with a zoning issue years ago. "James," I said, my voice low and urgent, "I need you to tell me what is happening with my account. The automated system says I am wiped out." There was a hesitation on the line. The sound of typing. "Well, yes, sir," James said, his tone shifting from professional to concerned. "The transfer went through yesterday. A wire transfer of $500,000. It cleared this morning." I closed my eyes. Yesterday. While I was sitting in the living room being told I was crazy, while I was staring at my wallet in the refrigerator, my money was flying out the door. "Who authorized it, James?" I asked. My voice was trembling. "I didn't sign anything. I have been home sick." James paused again. The silence was heavy. "Sir, the authorization came through the joint access portal. It was verified with a secondary signature key. The one assigned to your son, to Darius." The name hit me harder than a physical blow. Darius, my boy. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I sat with when he got his heart broken in high school. The boy who always looked at me like I was Superman. "Darius," I whispered. "Yes, sir," James confirmed. "And Mr. Thorne, the beneficiary." The money was sent to a corporate account, an entity called Skylark Holdings LLC. Skylark. I almost laughed. It was so brazen, so arrogant. Skylar didn't even try to hide it. Skylark. A combination of her name and the bird of prey she acted like. She had created a shell company named after herself to steal my life savings, but she couldn't have done it alone. She needed Darius. She needed his access code. She needed his complicity. James, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to keep the engineer in control. I want you to freeze the remaining balance. I want you to flag that transfer as fraudulent, Mr. Thorne, James said gently. We can freeze the remaining 2,000, but the wire is gone. It is in an external account now. And regarding the fraud, since Darius is a verified co-signer on the account, reclaiming those funds is going to be a legal nightmare. He had the authority, sir. You gave it to him 10 years ago, I remembered. 10 years ago when I had my first hip surgery, I added Darius to the account, just in case. I trusted him. I trusted him with my life. I understand, James, I said. Just lock the account. Don't let another cent leave. And James. Yes, sir. If anyone calls, if my wife calls or my son calls, you tell them the system is down. You tell them nothing. I will do my best, Mr. Thorne. Take care of yourself. I hung up the phone. The screen went dark. I sat there on the floor for a long time. The sunlight moved across the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I looked at my hands. They were the hands of a builder. They were strong, capable hands. But they couldn't fix this. You can't weld a broken heart. Darius didn't just steal my money. He stole my history. That money was the story of my life. It was the overtime shifts. It was the missed vacations. It was the sacrifice. And he gave it to her. He gave it to the woman who was gaslighting his father, who was turning his childhood home into a prison. Why? That was the question that spun in my head. Why would he do it? Darius wasn't evil. He was weak, yes, but he wasn't malicious. Then I remembered the whispers I had heard months ago, before I got sick. Phone calls late at night, Darius arguing with someone about interest rates, letters from creditors that he hid in his jacket pocket when I walked into the room. Gambling debts. Bad investments. Or was it just the simple crushing weight of trying to keep up with a wife who demanded a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget? Skylar must have promised him a way out. She must have told him that the money was sitting there doing nothing, that the old man didn't need it, that I was dying anyway, so what was the harm in taking the inheritance a little early? They were betting on my death. They were cashing in their chips before the game was even over. I felt a hot tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. This wasn't the time for grief. Grief is a luxury for the safe. I was behind enemy lines. Skylark Holdings. $500,000. I stood up. My knees cracked, but I forced them to hold my weight. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden. The garden Sarah had planted. You picked the wrong victim, Skylar, I whispered to the glass. You think because I am old, I am stupid. You think because I walk slow, I can't catch you. But you forgot what I did for a living. I didn't just build things, I inspected them. I found the rot. I found the rust. And when a structure was unsafe, I condemned it. Darius was no longer my son. In that moment, he ceased to be my flesh and blood. He was now just a compromised beam in a collapsing building. And an engineer knows that you cannot save a compromised beam. You have to cut it out before it brings the whole roof down on your head. I hid the phone back under the mattress. I smoothed the sheets. I practiced my limp. I practiced my vacant stare. When Camilla came home smelling of eucalyptus and lavender, I would be waiting. I would be the confused, helpless old man she wanted to see. I would let her think she had won. But I knew something she didn't. I knew where the money went. And I knew that numbers, unlike people, never lie. The paper trail was there. And I was going to follow it all the way to the courthouse and then all the way to the prison cell that was waiting for my daughter-in-law. The financial bleed was real. I was hemorrhaging cash. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had left me with nothing to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous man on earth. Friday night in the Thorne household used to be a time of relaxation, a time when the house smelled of roasted chicken and the sounds of jazz drifted from the record player. But this Friday the house was silent as a tomb. The air was thick with unsaid words and the heavy, suffocating tension of a war being fought in the shadows. I was in my bedroom, sitting in the dark, listening to the house settle. My thirst was unbearable. It was a side effect of the stress. Or maybe the lingering toxins from the sugar, but my throat felt like I had swallowed a handful of sand. I needed water. I knew the risks. Leaving the sanctuary of my bedroom at night was dangerous. This was enemy territory now. But I was an engineer. I calculated risks for a living. I knew the layout of this house better than I knew the lines on my own face. I had designed the staircase myself. 12 steps, red oak, hand-carved banister. I knew that the third step from the top creaked if you stepped in the center, so I always stepped to the right. I opened my door slowly. The hallway was pitch black. Camilla usually left a nightlight on, but tonight it was dark. That should have been my first warning. The absence of light is not an accident in a house controlled by a woman who calculates every move. I gripped my cane in my right hand and used my left hand to trace the wall. I moved slowly, shuffling my feet in my slippers. I reached the top of the stairs. I paused. I listened. Silence. I took the first step. Solid. I took the second step. Secure. I reached for the banister. My hand found the smooth, polished wood. It felt grounding. It felt like the one thing in this house that hadn't betrayed me yet. I took the third step, stepping to the right to avoid the squeak, and then my foot met resistance. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't a shoe left on the stairs. It was a line. A thin, taut line strung tight across the width of the staircase about 6 inches off the ground. My mind processed the data instantly. Tensile strength, monofilament, fishing line, high test. But physics is faster than thought. My momentum was carrying me forward, but my foot was held back. The center of gravity shifted. My body became a lever, and the fishing line was the fulcrum. I tried to grab the banister tighter, but the angle was wrong. My grip slipped. I pitched forward into the void. The fall wasn't like in the movies. It wasn't slow motion. It was violent and chaotic. I hit the fourth step with my shoulder. The impact punched the air out of my lungs. I tumbled. The world became a blur of hard edges and pain. My cane clattered away uselessly. I tried to protect my head. I tucked my chin, but I couldn't stop the momentum. I hit the landing halfway down with a sickening thud. I rolled. My left arm flailed out instinctively, trying to break the fall. That was the mistake. My palm hit the floor first, absorbing the full weight of my body plus the velocity of the descent. Bone is strong, stronger than concrete in some ways, but it has a breaking point. Snap! The sound was loud. It sounded like a dry branch breaking in a dead winter forest. It echoed in the silent hallway. Then came the pain. It wasn't an ache, it was a white-hot explosion. It started in my forearm and shot up to my shoulder, blinding me. It was a color. It was a scream that got stuck in my throat because I didn't have the breath to release it. I landed at the bottom of the stairs in a heap. My head rested on the cold hardwood floor. I gasped for air, struggling against the nausea that was rising in my stomach. My left arm lay at an unnatural angle, twisted like a broken doll. I lay there for a moment, waiting for the shock to wear off, waiting for the agony to settle into a dull roar. Then the lights flickered on. They didn't come on slowly. The chandelier above the foyer blazed to life, blinding me. I squinted, looking up the stairs. Camilla stood at the top of the landing. She wasn't wearing her pajamas. She wasn't disheveled from sleep. She was wearing a silk blouse and slacks. Her hair was brushed. She was wearing shoes. She had been waiting. She didn't scream. She didn't rush down the stairs calling my name. She didn't gasp in horror. She stood there looking down at me with the cold, detached expression of an inspector assessing a demolition site. She looked at my twisted body. She looked at my broken arm. And then she looked at the fourth step. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, a pair of nail scissors. She bent down. Snip. I saw the glint of the fishing line as it curled away, falling harmlessly against the baseboard. She picked up the loose ends. She put them in her pocket. The evidence was gone. Now and only now did the performance begin. "Elijah," she screamed. Her voice changed instantly from silence to hysteria. "Oh my God, Elijah!" She ran down the stairs, skipping the steps where the trap had been. She knelt beside me, but she didn't touch me. She didn't try to comfort me. She hovered over me, her eyes scanning my body to make sure the damage was severe enough. My arm. I gasped the words, tasting like copper. You set a trap." She leaned in close. Her perfume filled my nose, suffocating me. "You fell, Elijah." She whispered, her voice low and hard beneath the fake panic. "You are confused. You tripped over your own feet. Just like you lost your wallet. Just like you saw the trees moving. She pulled her phone from her pocket. She didn't dial 911. She didn't call an ambulance. She called Darius. I lay there, the pain in my arm pulsing in time with my heartbeat, listening to her destroy my life. "Darius, pick up," she sobbed into the phone. "Oh God, Darius, it is your father." He fell. I told him not to walk at night. I told him it was dangerous. But he wouldn't listen. She paused, listening to his frantic voice on the other end. "It is bad, honey," she continued, looking directly at my broken bone with a satisfied smirk. "His arm is broken, maybe his hip too. He is just lying there. He is mumbling crazy things, Darius. He thinks someone pushed him. He thinks—" I tried to shout. I tried to say, "No, I didn't say that," but the pain washed over me in a wave, stealing my voice. "We can't keep doing this, Darius," she said, her voice dropping to a tragic whisper. "I can't lift him. I can't watch him hurt himself anymore. This is it. We have to make the call. He needs professional care. We have to sign the papers for the facility. Tonight." She hung up the phone. She looked at me. The tears on her face dried up instantly. "Do you know what a broken bone means for a man your age, Elijah?" she asked conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "It is the end. The statistics are very clear. Once you fall, you never really get back up. You become a liability. The court sees a broken arm and they don't see an accident. They see incompetence. They see a man who can't be trusted to walk down his own stairs." She stood up and smoothed her blouse. "Darius is on his way," she said. "And when he gets here, he is going to see his father broken on the floor. He is going to feel guilty, he is going to feel scared, and he is going to do exactly what I tell him to do because he wants the guilt to stop." "Why?" I rasped. "Why didn't you just kill me?" She laughed softly, a chilling sound. "Killing you is messy, Elijah. There are autopsies, there are insurance investigations. But this is just sad. This is just nature taking its course. If you die, I get the life insurance. But if you live in a nursing home incapacitated and declared mentally incompetent, I get everything. I get the house, I get the pension, I get the control, and you get to sit in a wheelchair and watch me spend it." She walked to the kitchen. I heard the faucet turn on. She came back with a glass of water. I thought she was going to give me a drink. My throat was still burning, but she didn't. She took a sip herself, watching me writhe in pain. "The ambulance will be here eventually," she said. "After Darius sees you, we need him to see you like this. Pathetic. Helpless. It makes the paperwork much easier to sign." I closed my eyes. The physical pain was agonizing, but the emotional pain was worse. I had built those stairs. I had chosen that wood. I had sanded that banister with my own hands. My own creation had been turned into a weapon against me. But as I lay there listening to the siren in the distance getting closer, I realized something. She had made a mistake. She thought she had broken me. She thought that pain would make me compliant. But pain clarifies. Pain focuses the mind. She had cut the fishing line, but she hadn't seen me looking. She didn't know that I had seen the scissors. She didn't know that my mind was recording every word of her confession. I focused on the throbbing in my arm. I used it. I turned the pain into fuel. "You want to send me to a home, Camilla?" I thought, gritting my teeth against the agony. "You want to prove I can't take care of myself? Fine, you win this round. But you just escalated this war. You just turned it from a mental game into a physical one, and you forgot one thing about engineers. We know how to fix broken things, and we know how to demolish structures that are beyond repair." I heard the front door burst open. I heard Darius's frantic footsteps. "Pops! Oh my God! Pops!" I opened my eyes. I saw my son's terrified face hovering over me. I looked at him. I looked at Camilla standing behind him, wiping fake tears from her eyes. "Help me, son," I whispered. But I wasn't asking him to help me up. I was asking him to witness this. Because one day when the dust settled, he was going to need to remember exactly what he saw tonight. I let out a groan and let the darkness of the pain take me. I needed to save my strength. The hospital was the next battlefield, and I couldn't afford to die on the floor of my own hallway. Not yet. Not while she was still standing. Time in a hospital doesn't move in hours. It moves in drips. 1 drip, 2 drips, 3 drips. I lay in a bed that felt more like a coffin with railings staring up at a ceiling tile that had a water stain shaped like a map of Florida. My left arm was encased in a heavy plaster cast that anchored me to the mattress. My body felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. They were pumping something into my veins. I didn't know the name of the drug, but I knew its purpose. It was designed to turn a man into a ghost. It was designed to make the walls soft and the memories slippery. I tried to fight it. I tried to do math in my head. I tried to calculate the load-bearing capacity of the steel beams in the ceiling, but the numbers kept sliding away. 7 times 7 became a color. The square root of 81 became a sound. I was drifting in a gray fog where nothing mattered. Then the door opened. The fog didn't clear, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I smelled it before I saw it. That perfume, the one that smelled like crushed orchids and old money. Skylar walked in. She wasn't wearing hospital scrubs or visitor clothes. She was dressed for a boardroom meeting, a sharp black blazer, stiletto heels that clicked aggressively on the linoleum floor. Her hair was pulled back so tight it pulled her eyes into a permanent glare. She wasn't alone. Trailing behind her was a man I had never seen before. He was short, with a neck that spilled over his collar, and he clutched a leather briefcase to his chest like it contained nuclear codes. He looked at me, not as a patient, but as a signature waiting to happen. "Hello, Dad," Skylar said. Her voice was too loud. It bounced off the sterile walls. "You look rested." I tried to speak, but my tongue felt like a piece of dry felt. I managed a grunt. "I brought someone to see you," she continued, stepping to the side of the bed. "This is Mr. Thorne. He is an estate attorney. We need to handle some paperwork." The lawyer stepped forward. He didn't offer a hand. He just opened his briefcase on the rolling tray table and started spreading out documents. The papers were thick and white, covered in dense paragraphs of legal jargon. "Mr. Elijah Thorne," he said, his voice oily and rehearsed. "My name is Mr. Blackwood. I understand you have had a nasty fall. Very unfortunate. At your age, recovery can be complicated." I blinked, trying to focus on his face. It kept swimming in and out of focus. "Where is Darius?" I rasped. The words tore my throat. Skylar stepped in, blocking my view of the door. "Darius is parking the car. He is very upset, Dad. He can't bear to see you like this. Broken, confused. He asked me to handle this for him." She leaned over the railing. Her face was close to mine. I could see the heavy foundation makeup filling the pores of her skin. "Listen to me, Elijah," she whispered. "We are in a crisis. The hospital bills are going to be astronomical, and because of the accident, the state is getting involved. They are going to audit your assets. They want to take the house to pay for your care." I tried to shake my head. That wasn't how it worked. I had insurance. I had Medicare. I had the savings account they had already drained. "The house," I mumbled. "Sarah's house." "Exactly," she said, nodding vigorously. "Sarah's house. Your legacy. If the state takes it, Darius gets nothing. Chloe gets nothing. Do you want that? Do you want strangers living in the home you built? Fear is a powerful drug. It cuts through sedation better than caffeine. The thought of losing the house, the sanctuary where I raised my son and where I taught Chloe to walk, terrified me. "No," I whispered. "No strangers." "Then we have to act now," Mr. Blackwood interjected, tapping a pen against the paper. "This is a durable power of attorney. It grants Mrs. Skylar Thorne and Mr. Darius Thorne full control over your assets solely for the purpose of shielding them from state seizure. It is a protective measure, Elijah, a formality." He thrust the pen toward my good hand, my right hand. "Just sign here on the line marked Granddaughter. We will take care of the rest. We will save the house." I looked at the pen. It was a Mont Blanc. Expensive. Heavy. I looked at the paper. The letters were dancing. Total control. Revocation of rights. Unrestricted access. The engineer in me was screaming. Alarm bells were ringing in the back of my mind, muffled by the drugs but still audible. You don't sign contracts you haven't read. You don't sign contracts when you are under the influence. I need to read it, I said, pushing the pen away weakly. Skylar sighed, a sound of pure impatience. "Dad, you can't read it. You don't have your glasses. And frankly, you wouldn't understand it right now. You are medicated. You are confused. Just trust us. Do you trust Darius? I trust Darius, I said. But I don't trust you. I didn't say the last part out loud. I couldn't. The words wouldn't form. Just sign it, Elijah Schuyler snapped, losing her veneer of kindness. Stop being difficult. We are trying to help you. She grabbed my right hand. She forced the pen into my fingers. She wrapped her cold, manicured fingers around mine, squeezing tight. Right there, she commanded, pointing to the X. I looked at the paper. I looked at the signature line. If I signed this, I ceased to be a man. I became a line item in a ledger. I became property. I felt a surge of panic. I looked around the room for help. The nurse call button was out of reach. The door was closed. I was trapped in the cage. I need water. I gasped. My throat. Can't breathe. Schuyler rolled her eyes. She let go of my hand. Fine. Water. Then you sign. She reached for the plastic pitcher on the bedside table. She poured a cup of water. She didn't help me drink it. She just shoved the cup into my shaking hand. Drink, she ordered. I held the cup. The water sloshed over the rim, wetting my fingers. I looked at the tray table. The documents were spread out right in front of me. The original copies, the only copies they had brought. I looked at Schuyler. She was checking her watch, annoyed by the delay. I remembered the fishing line on the stairs. I remembered the sugar in the jar. I remembered the look in her eyes when she cut the line. I am not helpless, I thought. I am just waiting for my moment. And this was the moment. I brought the cup toward my lips. My hand was trembling violently. Not all of it was fake. Oops, I whispered. I didn't just drop the cup. I flicked my wrist. It was a calculated structural failure. The cup tipped. 12 ounces of ice water cascaded out. It didn't hit my chest. It hit the tray table. It hit the durable power of attorney. The water soaked into the expensive bond paper instantly. The ink began to run. The paper curled and dissolved into a soggy gray pulp. The water kept moving, dripping off the edge of the table, splashing onto Schuyler's suede shoes. She shrieked. It was a sound that belonged in a jungle, not a hospital. You clumsy old fool, she screamed, jumping back, shaking her foot. Look what you did! Mr. Blackwood grabbed the papers, trying to salvage them, but it was too late. They were ruined. The signature line was a blur of blue ink. It is destroyed, he muttered. I will have to draft a new one. I don't have another copy with me. Schuyler looked at the ruined papers, then she looked at me. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. There was no daughter-in-law left. There was only pure, unadulterated hatred. You did that on purpose, she hissed, lunging toward the bed. I shrank back into the pillows, clutching my broken arm. My hand slipped, I stammered. Liar, she screamed. She grabbed the front of my hospital gown, bunching the fabric in her fist, shaking me. You useless old man. You stubborn, arrogant waste of space. Do you think you can fight me? Look at you. You are wearing a diaper, Elijah. You are nothing. You are a vegetable rotting in a bed. She leaned in close, her face twisted into a snarl. I am going to bury you, she whispered, spitting the words into my face. I am going to put you in the cheapest, filthiest hole I can find. You won't see Darius. You won't see Chloe. You will die alone in the dark, smelling of your own urine. Do you hear me? You are done. She shoved me back against the mattress. My head hit the pillow hard. She turned to the lawyer. We are leaving, she barked. Go back to the office. Print it again. We are coming back tonight. And if he doesn't sign it, I will hold his hand and make him sign it myself, even if I have to break his fingers to do it. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. She ripped the door open. And then she froze. Standing in the hallway right in the center of the doorframe was a small figure. She was wearing her school uniform, a plaid skirt, and a white polo shirt. She was holding a teddy bear by one ear. It was Chloe. She wasn't looking at Schuyler. She was looking past her, looking directly at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a horror that no 8-year-old should ever have to know. She had heard everything. She had heard the scream. She had heard the insults. She had heard the threat to bury me. Chloe Schuyler stammered, stepping back. What are you doing here? You were supposed to be in the waiting room with your dad. Chloe didn't answer. She looked at her mother with a gaze that was terrifyingly blank. It was the look of a judge delivering a verdict. I got thirsty, Chloe said quietly. Her voice was steady, way too steady. I wanted water. Schuyler laughed nervously, reaching out to touch Chloe's shoulder. Chloe flinched away as if Schuyler's hand was made of fire. Come on, honey, Schuyler said, her voice shaking. Grandpa had an accident. He is not himself. We have to go. She grabbed Chloe's hand, dragging her away from the door. Chloe looked back at me one last time before she was pulled out of sight. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just nodded. A small, almost imperceptible nod. It was the same nod she gave me in the kitchen when she ran with the phone. I lay back in the wet bed, listening to the click of Skylar's heels fading down the hallway. My gown was damp. My arm was throbbing. I was trapped in a cage surrounded by enemies. But as I closed my eyes, a smile touched my lips. You messed up, Skylar, I thought. You let the witness see the crime. You thought you were yelling at a helpless old man, but you were yelling into a microphone, and that little girl recording it just happens to be the only thing in this world that your husband loves more than you. I looked at the water dripping from the table. It was a mess. But to an engineer, it was beautiful. It was a delay. And in construction, a delay can be the difference between a collapse and a reinforcement. I had bought myself 12 hours. I reached under the pillow with my good hand. I felt the hard plastic square of the Nokia phone I had managed to smuggle inside my sock. It was time to call in the cavalry. It was time to call Jerome. The war wasn't over. It was just moving to a new front. The hospital room at night is a different kind of world. It is a world of mechanical noises and hushed footsteps. The rhythm of the heart monitor next to my bed became the soundtrack of my incarceration. Beep, beep, beep. It was measuring the life of a man who was supposed to be fading away. But what the machine couldn't measure was the rage that was slowly burning off the fog in my brain. For the first 24 hours, I was a zombie. The drugs they had pumped into me after the fall were strong. They made the ceiling tiles dance. They made Skylar's voice sound like it was coming from underwater. But the human body is an amazing machine. It adapts. And my body was realizing that it was under attack. The nurse came in at 9 o'clock. Her name was Brenda. She was a kind woman with tired eyes who smelled of antiseptic and peppermint gum. She didn't know she was a jailer. She thought she was a healer. She held a small plastic cup with 2 pills in it. One white, one blue. "Time for your meds, Mr. Thorne," she said cheerfully, adjusting my pillow. "These will help you sleep. These will help with the pain in your arm." I looked at the pills. The white one was a painkiller. I needed that. My arm felt like it was being crushed in a vice. But the blue one, that was the sedative. That was the chemical leash Skylar had ordered. That was the pill that turned Elijah the engineer into Elijah the vegetable. I opened my mouth obediently. Brenda tipped the cup. I felt the pills hit my tongue. "Here is some water," she said, bringing the straw to my lips. I took a sip. I swallowed. I made the gulping sound loud enough for her to hear. I smiled at her, a weak, trembling smile. "Thank you, Brenda," I whispered. She patted my hand. "You get some rest now, Mr. Thorne." She turned and walked out of the room. As soon as the door clicked shut, the performance ended. I sat up, pushing through the wave of dizziness. I leaned over the side of the bed and coughed. The blue pill fell into my hand. I hadn't swallowed it. I had tucked it between my cheek and my gum. It tasted bitter, a chemical burn against the soft tissue of my mouth, but that bitterness was the taste of freedom. I didn't throw it in the trash can. That was amateur hour. They checked the trash. I wrapped the pill in a tissue and shoved it deep inside the hollow metal tube of the bed rail, a place no one ever cleaned, a place no one ever looked. Then I lay back and waited. Withdrawal is not pleasant. As the sedative left my system, my brain started to misfire. I sweated. I shook. My heart raced. But with every hour that passed, the fog lifted a little more. The ceiling tiles stopped dancing. The water stain looked like a water stain, not a monster. By 3 in the morning, I was awake. Truly awake. The pain in my left arm was excruciating. Without the full dose of painkillers, it felt like my bone was on fire. But I welcomed it. Pain is honest. Pain keeps you sharp. I used the pain as an anchor to hold on to reality. I reached down to my ankle. The cast on my arm made it difficult. I had to contort my body, grunting with effort. My fingers brushed the wool of my sock. I felt the hard rectangular outline, the Nokia. I pulled it out. It looked like a relic from another century in this high-tech hospital room. But it was the only piece of technology I trusted. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up a pale green in the darkness. I didn't call the police. The police would ask for proof. They would talk to Skylar. She would show them the medical reports saying I was demented. They would believe the well-dressed woman over the confused old man in a hospital gown. No. I needed someone who didn't care about reports. I needed someone who knew how to dig in the dirt. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Rough, gravelly. The voice of a man who smoked too much and slept too little. Yeah. Jerome, I whispered. There was a silence on the other end. Then the sound of a chair shifting. The sound of full attention. Pops the voice asked softer this time. Is that you? It is 3 a.m. It is me, Jerome. I need you to listen, and I need you not to ask stupid questions. Elijah. I heard you were sick, Jerome said, urgency creeping into his tone. I heard you fell down the stairs. The boys at the VFW said you were losing your marbles. Skylar posted on Facebook asking for prayers for your dementia. I laughed. It was a dry hacking sound. My marbles are fine, Jerome, but my family is trying to steal them, along with my house and my pension. I spent the next 10 minutes telling him everything. I told him about the coffee, the blue powder, the wallet in the fridge, the fishing line on the stairs. I told him about the fake doctor and the ruined signature. Jerome didn't interrupt. He listened with the discipline of the soldier he used to be. We had served in the engineering corps together in Vietnam. We had built bridges under fire. We knew that when the enemy is shooting, you don't panic, you calculate the trajectory. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. I am coming to get you, Jerome said finally. His voice was cold, deadly calm. I will be there in 20 minutes. I will kick down the front door if I have to. I will bring my lawyer. We will get you out of there, Elijah. No, I said sharply. What do you mean, no? Jerome snapped. They are poisoning you, Elijah. They broke your arm. This is attempted murder. I am not leaving you in there. If you pull me out now, I lose, I said, gripping the phone tight. Think about it, Jerome. If I leave tonight, Skylar claims I am paranoid. She claims I ran away. She still has the power of attorney process in motion. She still has my son wrapped around her finger. And most importantly, she still has the $500,000 she stole. So what is the play, Jerome asked. I need to know the endgame, I said. Skylar isn't doing this just for the cash in the bank. That is small change for the lifestyle she wants. She kept talking about the house, about the state taking the house. She is terrified of losing control of the property. It is a nice house, Jerome grunted. Prime real estate. It is more than that, I said. My engineer's brain was working, connecting the dots. Skylar is a real estate agent. She knows the market. She registered a shell company called Skylark Holdings. You don't create a holding company to buy groceries. You create it to hold assets. I took a deep breath, fighting a wave of nausea. I need you to stay on the outside, Jerome. I need you to dig. Find out what is happening with the land around my house. Check the zoning permits, check the city planning records, see if anyone is buying up the neighborhood. And you? Jerome asked. What are you going to do? I looked at the cast on my arm. I looked at the dark room. I am going to die, I said. What? Metaphorically, Jerome. I am going to give them exactly what they want. They want a vegetable. I will give them a vegetable. I am going to stop fighting. I am going to stop talking. I am going to drool and stare at the wall. I am going to make them believe that the fall destroyed whatever was left of my mind. That is dangerous, Elijah, Jerome warned. If they think you are gone, they might get careless. But they might also decide to finish the job. They won't kill me yet, I reasoned. They need me alive to sign the final deed transfer. A dead man's estate takes months to settle in probate. They are in a hurry. Skylar is desperate for cash now. She needs a living, compliant Elijah to sign the house over to her shell company. I paused, letting the plan settle in my mind. Let them bring the papers, Jerome. Let them bring me home. Let them think they have won. And while they are celebrating, I will be listening. But I need you to find the smoking gun. Find out why that land is worth killing for. Jerome sighed. A heavy, resigned sound. You are a stubborn old mule, Elijah. You always were. Even in the jungle, you never took the easy way out. The easy way out collapses under pressure, I said. I build things to last, Jerome, and I am going to build a trap they can't crawl out of. All right, Jerome said. I am on it. I have a contact in the city clerk's office. I will pull the files first thing in the morning. But Elijah? Yeah. If I sense for 1 second that you are in physical danger, if I get a bad feeling, I am coming in, and I am bringing the cavalry. Understood, I said. One more thing, Jerome. Chloe, the granddaughter, She knows. She is my inside man. If you can't reach me, watch the house. If you see her running, you grab her, you protect her. She is the only innocent thing left in this mess. I got her. Jerome promised. Stay safe, Pops. Over and out. The line went dead. I turned off the phone and hid it back in my sock. I lay back on the pillows. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. The awakening had begun. For the next 3 days, I played the role of a lifetime. When Skylar came back the next morning with the fresh papers, I didn't argue. I didn't spill water. I just stared at her with empty, glossy eyes. I let my head loll to the side. I let drool pool at the corner of my mouth. Dad, Skylar asked, waving a hand in front of my face. "Can you hear me?" I groaned a low guttural sound that meant nothing. She turned to Darius, who was standing by the door looking pale and sick. "He is gone, Darius," she said, her voice thick with fake sympathy. The shock of the fall, it accelerated everything. "He doesn't even know who we are anymore." Darius walked over to the bed. He took my hand. His hand was warm, but his grip was weak. "Pops," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I am so sorry." I wanted to squeeze his hand. I wanted to tell him to wake up, to be a man, to see the viper standing next to him. But I didn't. I let my hand lie limp in his. I stared past him at the water stain on the ceiling. "Sign the papers," Darius, Skylar said softly, putting a hand on his shoulder. "We have to take care of him now. We have to take control. It is what he would have wanted." I watched through the haze of my eyelashes as my son picked up the pen. I watched him sign his name. I watched him sign my life away. "Good," Skylar whispered, taking the papers. She looked at me, and for a second her eyes locked with mine. There was no pity in them, only triumph. I closed my eyes. "Enjoy it, Skylar," I thought. "Sign your name. Build your tower. Because the higher you build it, the harder it is going to fall. And I am going to be the ground rushing up to meet you." They brought me home in a private ambulance. It wasn't out of kindness. It was out of optics. Skylar wanted the neighbors to see the dutiful daughter-in-law bringing the sick patriarch back to his castle, but they didn't carry me upstairs to my bedroom. They didn't carry me to the room where I had slept for 40 years, where the morning sun hit the pillows just right. They wheeled the gurney into the downstairs study, my study. It used to be a room of mahogany and leather. It used to be filled with the smell of old paper and pipe tobacco. It was where I drafted the blueprints for the Midtown Bridge. It was where I taught Darius how to tie a tie. But now the bookshelves were draped in plastic sheets. My desk was gone, replaced by a table filled with medical supplies. The leather armchair was replaced by a rented hospital bed with metal rails that locked into place with a sound like a prison cell slamming shut. This was my new world, a 12 by 12 box in the corner of my own house. For the first 2 days, the routine was brutal. I maintained my vegetative state. I stared at the ceiling. I let my jaw go slack. I didn't speak. I didn't move my good arm. I became exactly what they wanted me to be. A piece of furniture that breathed. But furniture doesn't get hungry. And furniture doesn't have dignity. Camilla was my primary caretaker. Skylar had fired the visiting nurse service, claiming it was too expensive given the upcoming legal costs. She said Camilla could handle it. She said Camilla was family. But Camilla wasn't a nurse. She was a warden. It started with the food, or rather, the lack of it. On Tuesday morning, I lay in the bed, my stomach cramping with a hunger so sharp it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I hadn't eaten a solid meal in 3 days. Camilla walked in around noon. She wasn't carrying a tray for me. She was carrying a plate for herself, a turkey club sandwich with bacon. The smell filled the small room, rich and salty and maddening. She pulled a chair up to the side of my bed. She sat down, crossing her legs. She took a bite, chewing slowly, savoring the crunch of the lettuce. She looked at me. She saw my eyes track the sandwich. She smiled. "Hungry, Elijah?" she asked, swallowing a bite. I didn't answer. I couldn't break character. I just stared at the wall. She took another bite. "It is a shame, really," she said, wiping a crumb from her lip. "Dr. Roberts said your digestion is shutting down. He said feeding you solid food would just cause a blockage. It would be cruel to feed you. So we are sticking to the liquid diet." She reached for a plastic cup on the table. It was filled with a gray, lukewarm slurry. Ensure mixed with water, diluted to make it last longer. She held the straw to my lips. I took a sip. It tasted like chalk and chemicals. It barely coated my tongue, let alone filled my stomach. That is enough, she said, pulling the cup away after 2 swallows. We don't want you getting fat, do we? You are heavy enough to lift as it is. She finished her sandwich in front of me, licking the mayonnaise off her fingers one by one. It wasn't about nutrition, it was about dominance. She was showing me that she controlled the most basic biological necessity of my life. But the hunger was manageable compared to the diaper. That afternoon I felt the pressure in my bladder. I needed to go. In the hospital, the nurses had helped me use a bedpan. It was embarrassing, but it was clinical. Here there was no bedpan. Camilla walked in with a large plastic package. Adult diapers, the cheapest brand available. She pulled the blankets off me, exposing my legs to the cold air. She didn't close the blinds. The gardeners were outside working on the lawn. Anyone could look in. Lift your hips, she ordered, tapping my leg. I tried to move, but the shame was heavier than my body. She sighed loudly. Useless. Absolutely useless. She rolled me onto my side, roughly twisting my broken arm in the process. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I bit my lip. She ripped the diaper open and shoved it under me. She strapped it tight, too tight, cutting into my skin. There, she said, patting my stomach like I was a toddler. Now you can just go whenever you want. I am not walking you to the bathroom. I am not cleaning a bedpan. You are an animal now, Elijah, so you can live like one. She walked out, leaving the door open. I lay there, tears of rage leaking from the corners of my eyes. I was Elijah Thorne. I was a man who commanded respect. I was a man who stood tall. And now I was being forced to soil myself in my own study while my wife watched television in the next room. I held it. I held it until my kidneys burned. I held it until I was sweating. I refused to give her the satisfaction. But I wasn't just suffering. I was listening. That evening the house was quiet. Camilla was in the kitchen. I could hear the clinking of wine glasses. She wasn't alone. Skylar was there. I heard the door to the study creak open. I expected Camilla coming to torment me again, but it was low. It was quiet. Grandpa. It was Chloe. She crawled into the room on her hands and knees, staying below the line of sight of the windows. She looked like a soldier in a trench. She scuttled to the side of the bed, hidden by the draping sheets. She popped her head up. Her face was pale. She looked thinner. The stress of this house was eating her too. Here, she whispered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a granola bar. It was smashed and melted, but to me it looked like a steak dinner. Eat it fast, she said, glancing at the door, before she comes back. I grabbed the bar with my good hand, tearing the wrapper with my teeth. I shoved it into my mouth, chewing frantically, swallowing the dry oats without water. It hurt going down, but it felt like fuel. Thank you, baby, I whispered. Chloe gripped the metal rail of the bed. Her knuckles were white. I heard them. Grandpa, she said, her voice trembling. I was in the air vent. In the laundry room. It goes right into the kitchen. They were talking loud. They were drinking the red juice that makes them mean. What did they say, Chloe? Tell me exactly. She took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. She was a smart girl. She had inherited the engineer's brain, too. Skylar said the buyer is ready, she said. She said a man named Mr. Henderson wants the land. He wants to tear down the house, Grandpa. He wants to build condos. I closed my eyes. Condos. They were going to bulldoze Sarah's garden. They were going to demolish the walls that held our memories. How much, I asked. $3 million, Chloe whispered. Skylar said it is a cash offer. She was laughing, Grandpa. She said she is going to be rich. She said she is going to put all the money into something called Metacoin. Metacoin, my blood ran cold. My blood. I knew what that was. I watched the financial news. Metacoin was a speculative cryptocurrency scheme. It was a bubble, a scam. It was run by influencers, not bankers. Skylar wasn't just greedy, she was stupid. She was going to sell a $3 million tangible asset prime real estate and dump it into a digital void that could collapse overnight. She is gambling everything, I thought. She is betting the farm on a roulette wheel. And what about me, Chloe? I asked, steeling myself for the answer. What are they going to do with me when the house is sold? Chloe started to cry, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. They said you are going to Shady Pines. Shady Pines. I knew the place. It was a state-run facility on the edge of the city. It had lost its license twice in the last decade. It was a warehouse for the indigent. It was where people went to die when nobody loved them. Camilla said it smells like pee there, Chloe sobbed. She said you won't notice because you already smell like pee. She laughed, Grandpa. She called you a leaky old faucet. Rage is a fire, but cold rage is a laser. I felt it burn through the humiliation. I felt it cauterize the shame. They wanted to sell my history to buy magic internet money. They wanted to throw me in the trash like a used wrapper. I reached through the bars and wiped Chloe's tears. "Listen to me, Chloe," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Crying time is over. They made a plan. Now we make a counter-plan." Suddenly we heard footsteps. Heavy, angry footsteps. "Camilla." "Hide," I hissed. "Under the bed. Now." Chloe dove under the bed just as Camilla walked in. She was holding a glass of wine, swaying slightly. Her eyes were glassy. She sniffed the air. She smelled the granola bar, the faint scent of chocolate and oats. She walked to the bed. She looked at me. She leaned in, sniffing my breath. "You have been eating," she accused, poking me in the chest. "Who gave you food?" "Was it Darius?" I stared at her blankly, letting my mouth hang open. She grabbed my face, squeezing my cheeks until my teeth cut into the lining of my mouth. "Don't play dumb with me, Elijah. I smell it." She looked around the room. She looked at the floor. Then she saw it. The tiny corner of the granola bar wrapper that had fallen on the floor near the wheel of the bed. She bent down and picked it up. She looked at it. Then she looked under the bed. My heart stopped. If she saw Chloe, but she didn't look deep enough. She just saw the dust bunnies. She stood up. "You stole this, didn't you?" she hissed, waving the wrapper. "You had it hidden in your pocket from the hospital. You sneaky, greedy old pig." She threw the wrapper in my face. "Fine. You want to eat. Let's see how you like the consequences." She ripped the blanket off me again. She checked the diaper. It was dry. I had held it. "Oh, so we are holding it in now, are we?" she mocked. "Playing games with our bladder. Well, let's see how long you can hold it." She walked to the table and grabbed the pitcher of water. The full pitcher. She poured it, not into a cup. She poured it directly onto the mattress, right between my legs. The cold water soaked the sheets instantly. It soaked my gown. It soaked the diaper, making it heavy and useless. The cold shock made my muscles spasm. There she smiled, cruel and satisfied. "Now you are wet. And guess what? I am not changing you. You can sit in it all night. Maybe the diaper rash will teach you not to steal food in my house." She turned off the light, leaving me in the dark, leaving me wet and cold and humiliated. "Sleep tight, hubby," she called out, slamming the door. I lay there shivering in the puddle of water. I heard Chloe crying softly under the bed. "Don't cry, baby," I whispered into the dark. "Don't cry." I wasn't crying. I was calculating. They were going to sell the house for $3 million. That meant there was a closing date. That meant there was a title transfer. That meant there was a paper trail. Skylar thought she was investing in the future, but she was about to find out that she had invested in a trap. I reached down and tapped the floor 3 times. Chloe tapped back. We were down, but we weren't out. The house of cards was built high, but they forgot that the man they locked in the basement was the one who designed the foundation, and I knew exactly which brick to pull to make the whole thing come crashing down. The darkness in my study was absolute, but I wasn't asleep. I was waiting. Under the cover of the heavy quilt that smelled of mildew and neglect, I held the Nokia phone to my ear. The volume was turned down so low it was barely a whisper, but Jerome's voice came through clear enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "You are sleeping next to a black widow, Elijah," Jerome said. His voice was grim, lacking its usual rough humor. I pulled the file from Ohio. Her name wasn't Camilla Thorne back then. It was Camilla Vance. And her husband wasn't an old engineer. He was a 40-year-old car salesman named Marcus. "Tell me," I whispered into the darkness, my eyes fixed on the sliver of light under the door. "He died 7 years ago," Jerome continued. "The coroner ruled it kidney failure. Natural causes." But I dug into the toxicology addendum, the one that got buried when the life insurance check cleared. There were traces of ethylene glycol in his system, Elijah. "Antifreeze," I breathed. "Exactly. It is sweet. You can mix it with anything. Soda, juice, or coffee." She cremated him 3 days later. No autopsy could be done after that. She walked away with $200,000. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It wasn't just greed. It was a pattern. She was a predator who moved from host to host, draining them dry before disposing of the husk. She had done it to Marcus. Now she was doing it to me. But knowing the structural flaw of your enemy is useless unless you apply pressure to it. I hung up the phone and hid it back in the mattress. I lay there in the dark, calculating. Camilla was fearless because she thought she was invisible. She thought her past was buried in an urn in Ohio. She thought her partner Skylar was loyal, but criminals don't have loyalty. They have leverage, and I was about to turn their leverage into a wrecking ball. I heard the footsteps I had been waiting for. It was 2 a.m. Camilla was a night owl. She drank when she was nervous, and tonight she was nervous. The house sale was approaching, and the stress of managing a dying husband was getting to her. The door to the study creaked open. She stood there silhouetted by the hall light. She was holding a glass of red wine. She swayed slightly. She walked into the room bringing the smell of expensive Merlot and cheap perfume. She sat in the chair next to my bed watching me breathe. "Still alive," she muttered, taking a sip. "You are a stubborn old goat, aren't you? Just let go, Elijah. Do us all a favor." I didn't move. I kept my breathing shallow. I waited until she was comfortable, until she was just another shadow in the room. Then I opened my eyes, not at her. I looked past her. I fixed my gaze on the empty corner of the room right behind her left shoulder. I widened my eyes. I let my jaw tremble. I raised my good hand slowly, pointing a shaking finger at the empty air. "He is wet," I whispered. My voice was raspy, broken. "Why is he wet?" "Camilla." Camilla jumped, spilling a drop of wine on her silk robe. She spun around, looking at the empty corner. What she snapped, turning back to me. "Who is wet? You are dreaming, old man. Go back to sleep." I didn't blink. I kept staring at the corner, my eyes tracking an invisible figure as it moved closer. "He says he is thirsty," I croaked. "He says the blue drink made him thirsty." Camilla froze. The glass halted halfway to her mouth. The room went deadly silent. "What did you say?" she whispered. I sat up slowly, ignoring the pain in my broken arm. I looked terrified, not of her, but of the ghost I was inventing. "The man in the car dealership suit," I said, describing the photo Jerome had sent to my phone earlier. "He is holding his stomach. He says it burns, Camilla. He says the Gatorade tasted like candy, but now his insides are melting." Camilla stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor, her face drained of all color, leaving her makeup standing out like a mask. "Who told you that?" she hissed. Her voice was trembling. "Who told you about the Gatorade?" I didn't answer her directly. I kept talking to the air. "July 4th, I mumbled, rocking back and forth. "The fireworks were loud. You told him to drink it because it was hot outside. You put it in the cooler. The blue one." Camilla dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor, splashing red liquid across the white tiles like blood. She backed away until she hit the wall. "Stop it!" she screamed. "Stop it right now! How do you know that?" I looked at her then. I let my eyes clear for just a second, showing her a flash of lucidity before sliding back into the madness. "He is asking for his money, Camilla," I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. "The $200,000. He says you promised to buy a boat, but you bought a cremation instead." She was shaking now, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. This wasn't dementia. Dementia is random. This was specific. This was the one secret she had never told a soul. Not Darius, not the police. Unless... I tilted my head, looking at her with confusion. "The blonde woman is laughing," I said softly. Camilla froze. "What blonde woman?" I pointed to the door. "The one who comes here. Skylar. She is standing with Marcus. She is telling him secrets." I saw the gear turn in her head. It was a beautiful thing to watch, the seed of paranoia taking root and blossoming instantly. "Skylar told him," she whispered to herself. I nodded eagerly, like a child telling on a sibling. "Skylar knows," I said. "Skylar told the man to come scare me. She says you are getting greedy, Camilla. She says she doesn't need you anymore." "No," Camilla breathed. "That is impossible. Skylar doesn't know about Ohio. I never told her." I lay back down, pulling the covers up to my chin. "She found the papers," I mumbled, closing my eyes. "She found the box in the attic. She called the police, Camilla. She traded you. She is going to keep the house money and send you to the place with the bars." Camilla looked at me, then she looked at the door. Panic is a primal thing. It overrides logic. In her mind, there was no way a senile old man could know about the ethylene glycol or the insurance money unless someone fed him the information. And the only person who had access, the only person who had been digging into the finances, was Skylar. Skylar was a real estate agent. She knew how to do background checks. She must have found out. And now, according to the narrative I was spinning, she was planning to double-cross Camilla. Camilla ran to the door. She looked down the hallway toward the guest room where Skylar sometimes stayed when Darius was working late. "That little snake," she hissed. She turned back to me. Her eyes were wild. "What else did she say, Elijah? What else did the blonde woman tell the ghost?" I opened one eye. "She said the coffee is too slow," I whispered. "She said she switched the jars. She wants you to go to jail, Camilla. She wants it all." Camilla let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She ran out of the room, leaving the shattered glass and the spilled wine. I heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs. I heard a door slam. Then I heard shouting. I didn't hear the words, but I heard the tone. It was the sound of a partnership dissolving. I lay there in the dark, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. Real, genuine. "You thought you were the hunter, Camilla," I thought, listening to the muffled argument upstairs. "But you forgot the first rule of engineering. Every structure has a breaking point. You put too much weight on your alliance with Skylar. You built your house on a foundation of greed and mistrust. I had simply tapped the glass. And now the cracks were spreading." I reached under the mattress and touched the phone. "Phase 1 complete," I whispered. "The enemy is divided." I closed my eyes and let the exhaustion take me. But I slept lightly. I knew that a wounded animal is dangerous. Tomorrow the war would escalate. But tonight I had turned the ghosts of her past into the soldiers of my future. And Marcus, wherever he was, I hoped he was enjoying the show. 75 candles is a fire hazard, but Skylar insisted on the visual. She wanted a spectacle. Saturday arrived with a gray, overcast sky that matched the mood inside the house perfectly. My 75th birthday was not a celebration of my life. It was the coronation of my son and his wife as the new monarchs of my empire, and I was the old king being paraded out for one last humiliation before being locked in the tower forever. They dressed me in a sweater vest and slacks that were too big for my wasting frame. They combed my hair to cover the bald spots. They wheeled me out into the living room, which had been transformed. Streamers hung from the chandelier. A banner that said, "Happy 75th Pops," draped across the fireplace. It looked festive. It felt like a wake. The guests began to arrive at 1 o'clock. These weren't my friends from the engineering corps. These weren't the men I played poker with. Those men had been told I was too sick for visitors. No, these were Skylar's people, her real estate clients, her tennis partners, and a few of my distant relatives' cousins I hadn't seen in a decade, people who didn't know me well enough to spot the act. They looked at me with a pity. I sat in the rented wheelchair, my broken arm resting on a pillow, my head lolling to the side. I drooled a little, just enough to make them uncomfortable. "Oh, he looks so frail," Aunt Bessie whispered, patting my hand. "Does he know we are here?" "He has good days and bad days," Skylar said loudly, her voice filled with tragic bravery. "Today is a bit foggy, but we wanted him to feel the love. We wanted him to be surrounded by family one last time before the transition." She didn't say the words nursing home, but everyone heard them. Darius stood by the punch bowl drinking heavily. He wouldn't look at me. He looked at his shoes. He looked at the wall. He looked anywhere but at the father he was betraying. He was wearing a new suit. I wondered if he bought it with the money he stole from my retirement fund. Camilla was there too, but she was different today. The confident predator from a week ago was gone. She was jumpy. Her eyes darted around the room, constantly checking the corners. She stayed away from Skylar. Every time Skylar moved near her, Camilla flinched. The ghost story had worked. She was terrified. She believed Skylar was plotting against her and that paranoia was the only thing keeping her from noticing that the trap was actually closing on her. The plan was simple yet elegant. Skylar intended to have me sign the final deed transfer in front of a notary and witnesses disguised as a birthday activity. She would frame it as me signing a thank you note or a memory book, but in reality I would be signing away the title to the house. But they had made a mistake. They hired a nurse for the day to handle my bathroom needs and feeding so they could focus on entertaining. They didn't interview the nurse. They just hired the agency that came up first on Google, an agency that Jerome owned. At 2 o'clock, a large man in blue scrubs walked through the front door. He wore a mask over his nose and mouth, which wasn't unusual in a house with a sick, elderly man. He had thick glasses and walked with a stoop. But I knew that walk. I had seen that walk in the jungles of Vietnam and on construction sites in Detroit. Jerome. He walked over to my wheelchair. "Hello, Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice muffled and changed. "Time for your afternoon vitals." He checked my pulse. His hand was warm and strong. He squeezed my wrist 3 times. "The signal. Everything is in place," he whispered, barely moving his lips. I blinked once. The party reached its crescendo. Skylar tapped a spoon against her champagne glass. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for coming." She began standing in the center of the room, looking radiant and treacherous. "This has been such a hard year for Darius and me. Watching a man as strong as Elijah fade away, it breaks our hearts." She dabbed at a dry eye. "But we promised him we would protect his legacy. We promised him we would keep his affairs in order so he could rest. And today, on his 75th birthday, we are fulfilling that promise." She motioned to the notary, a woman standing in the corner with a clipboard. "We have prepared the final paperwork to place Elijah's assets into a protective trust managed by Darius. It is what he wanted when he was still lucid. And we thought it would be beautiful to have him sign it here, surrounded by the people who love him." A murmur of approval went through the room. They bought it. They thought she was a saint. Skylar walked over to me. She knelt down. The smell of her perfume was suffocating. "Dad," she said, smiling that wolfish smile. "It is time. We are going to sign the papers now, just like we talked about. Remember, to save the house." She placed a folder on the tray table attached to my wheelchair. It was a blue folder. I could see the edge of the deed transfer sticking out. Jerome stepped in. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, clumsily bumping into the table. "I just need to wipe his hands first. Infection protocol." He pulled a wet wipe from his pocket. In the commotion of him cleaning my hands, he blocked Skylar's view for 2 seconds. It was a magic trick, a sleight of hand we had practiced with blueprints 40 years ago. His left hand wiped my fingers. His right hand slid the blue folder off the tray and into the large pocket of his scrubs, replacing it instantly with an identical blue folder he had hidden under his clipboard. It was done. Skylar didn't see it. She was too busy smiling at the guests playing to the camera. Camilla didn't see it. She was staring at the window looking for ghosts. Darius didn't see it. He was pouring another drink. Jerome stepped back. "All clean," he mumbled. Skylar opened the folder. The document on top looked exactly like the deed. It had the same header, the same font. But the text was very different. She handed me a pen. "Right here, Dad," she said, pointing to the line. "Make an X if you have to, or just a scribble. We just need your mark." The room held its breath. The silence was heavy. I looked at the pen. I looked at my hand. It was shaking. I looked at Darius. He was watching me now. There was tears in his eyes. Darius the First croaked. My voice was weak. "Help me." Skylar stiffened. "He doesn't need help, Elijah. Just sign it." Darius the First repeated louder, "Come here." Darius walked over slowly. He knelt on the other side of the chair. "I am here, Pops," he whispered. "I want you to see this," I said. Skylar glared at me. "Just sign the damn paper," she hissed under her breath so the guests couldn't hear. I gripped the pen. I didn't make an X. I didn't scribble. I planted my elbow on the tray table. I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of strength I had left. The engineer woke up. The calculator woke up. The father woke up. I wrote my name. Elijah Marcus Thorne. It was clear. It was bold. It was the signature of a man who builds skyscrapers. Skylar gasped. She looked at the signature. She looked at me. For a second, she was confused. The old man wasn't supposed to be able to write like that. "Good," she said quickly, closing the folder before anyone could see the text. "It is done." She stood up holding the folder like a trophy. "He signed it," she announced, beaming. "The trust is secured." The guests clapped. Aunt Bessie wiped a tear. Skylar handed the folder to the notary. "Notarize this immediately," she ordered, "and file it electronically today. I want it recorded." The notary stamped it. She scanned it with a portable scanner she had brought. Click, sent. The document was now in the county records. It was official. It was legally binding. Skylar let out a breath she had been holding for months. She looked at Camilla. She looked at Darius. She had won. She had the house. She had the money. She had the power. Or so she thought. Jerome moved behind my wheelchair. He unlocked the brakes. cake," Skylar shouted. "Let's cut the cake." She walked to the large cake on the dining table. She picked up a knife. I waited. I watched her preen. I watched her bask in the glory of her victory. Jerome handed me a glass of water. But it wasn't water. It was ginger ale. The bubbles hit my tongue sharp and sweet. I sat up straight. I pulled my broken arm off the pillow. I adjusted my sweater vest. The drool stopped. The shaking stopped. The vacancy in my eyes vanished, replaced by the cold, hard steel of a man who has just sprung a trap. I cleared my throat. It was a loud, deliberate sound. It cut through the chatter of the party. Everyone turned to look. They expected a cough or a groan. Instead, they saw Elijah Thorne sitting upright looking at his daughter-in-law with the intensity of a judge. "Skylar," I said. My voice didn't waver. It didn't rasp. It boomed. It was the voice that had commanded 300 men on a construction site. It was the voice that could be heard over jackhammers. Skylar dropped the cake knife. It clattered onto the china plate. "Dad," she stammered. "What?" I rolled my wheelchair forward one strong push. "The cake looks dry," I said, my voice filling the room. "And the champagne is cheap. But I suppose you had to save money since you just spent $500,000 of my retirement fund." The room went deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear Skylar's heart stopping. "Excuse me," Aunt Bessie asked, confused. "What did he say?" "He is having an episode," Skylar screamed, her face turning red. "Darius, get him out of here. He is delusional. Nurse, take him to his room." Jerome stepped forward. He pulled down his mask. He took off his thick glasses. He wasn't the hired help anymore. He was Jerome Vance, private investigator and decorated veteran. "I am not a nurse, ma'am," Jerome said, his voice gravelly and tough. "And he isn't going anywhere." Skylar looked from me to Jerome. Her eyes widened. The realization hit her like a freight train. "The signature," she whispered. "What did you sign?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of the wolf that the grandmother warned you about. "I signed a confession of judgment, Skylar," I said, calm and cool, "and a transfer of guardianship." I pointed to the notary, who was looking at her scanner in horror. "Read it," I commanded. "Read the document you just filed with the county clerk." The notary scrolled through her tablet. Her hands were shaking. It says, "This is an affidavit acknowledging the theft of $500,000 by Skylar and Darius Thorne." The notary read, her voice trembling. "And it grants full legal guardianship of the minor child Chloe Thorne to her grandfather Elijah Thorne, effective immediately due to parental negligence and criminal activity." Darius fell to his knees. He looked at Skylar. "What did we sign?" he whispered. Skylar screamed, a primal animalistic sound. She lunged for the notary, trying to grab the tablet, trying to delete the file. But it was too late. The cloud never forgets, and neither do I. I stood up. My legs were weak, but my will was iron. I stood up out of that wheelchair, towering over the ruins of their party. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered. "Now let's see who gets the wish." The room smelled of stale champagne and desperation. From my vantage point in the wheelchair, I could see every bead of sweat on Darius's forehead. He was standing to my right, clutching a glass of scotch like it was the only thing keeping him upright. To my left, Skylar hovered like a vulture, her eyes fixed on the blue folder lying on the tray table. The air was thick with tension, the kind of static charge you feel right before a lightning strike. I let my head loll to the side, drooling slightly onto the bib they had tied around my neck. It was a humiliating prop, but essential for the illusion. I needed them to see a broken vessel. I needed them to see a man who had lost the capacity to understand what was happening, let alone orchestrate a counterstrike. The notary, a woman named Mrs. Gable, looked uncomfortable. She kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other, glancing at the clock. She was a professional used to sterile offices and clear instructions, not this macabre birthday party where the guest of honor looked half dead and the hosts looked like they were robbing a grave. "We are ready," Skylar announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the guests. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the blue folder. It was a standard legal binder, the kind you buy at any office supply store. Inside was the deed to my house, the transfer of my pension, and the total power of attorney over my life. Or at least that is what she thought. "Dad," Skylar said, loud enough for the back row to hear, "we just need you to make your mark. Remember what we talked about. This is to protect the estate." She opened the folder. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the moment of critical failure. If she looked too closely at the pages, if she decided to read the fine print, the whole structure would collapse. But I was banking on her arrogance. Skylar didn't read because she believed she was the author of this narrative. She believed she was the smartest person in the room. "Wait." The voice came from behind me. It was low, muffled, and calm. "Jerome." He stepped forward in his blue scrubs, moving with a clumsy, lumbering gait that disguised his military precision. He was holding a wet rag and a bottle of sanitizer. "Protocol, ma'am," Jerome mumbled through his mask. "I have to sanitize the surface. The agency is strict about germs, especially with his immune system compromised." Skylar rolled her eyes, letting out a huff of annoyance. "Is this really necessary right now?" she snapped. "We are in the middle of a ceremony." Jerome didn't answer. He just moved. He bumped into the tray table hard. The water glass wobbled. The blue folder slid dangerously close to the edge. "Whoops!" Jerome grunted, reaching out to catch the glass. In the chaos of his clumsy reach, his broad torso blocked Skylar's view of the tray for exactly 2 seconds. It was a maneuver we used to call a visual obstruction in the field. His left hand steadied the water glass, but his right hand, the hand hidden by his body, moved with the speed of a magician. He swiped the original blue folder off the tray and into the deep pocket of his scrubs. In the same fluid motion, he slid an identical blue folder from beneath the clipboard he was holding under his arm onto the tray. It was seamless. It was beautiful. It was the result of 40 years of friendship and trust. "Sorry about that," Jerome muttered, stepping back and wiping the table with the rag. "All clean." Skylar glared at him with pure venom. "You are clumsy," she hissed. "Step back." She looked down at the folder. She didn't notice the switch. Why would she? It was the same color, the same weight, and when she flipped it open the first page, the cover sheet was identical to the one she had printed. Jerome had made sure of that, but everything underneath that cover sheet was different. "Okay, Dad," she said, pushing the pen into my trembling hand. "Sign here." I looked at the paper. The text was dense. To the casual observer, it looked like standard legal boilerplate, but I knew what it said. I had dictated it to Jerome 3 nights ago. I, Elijah Thorne, being of sound mind and body. It wasn't a deed transfer. It was a confession, and it was a trap. I gripped the pen. I let my hand shake violently. I needed to sell the struggle. I needed them to believe that simply making an X was a Herculean effort. I can't, I rasped, letting the pen slip from my fingers. Skylar let out a frustrated growl. She picked up the pen and jammed it back into my hand, wrapping her cold fingers around mine. "Yes, you can," she whispered, her voice tight. "Do it for the house, Elijah. Do it for Chloe." The mention of Chloe sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I looked over at the corner of the room. Chloe was standing there, holding her teddy bear, watching me with wide, terrified eyes. She knew what was happening. She was the only witness who mattered. I squeezed the pen. I guided the tip to the paper. Skylar was pushing my hand, trying to force the movement, but I resisted just enough to make it look like a spasm. I signed. It wasn't my full signature. It was a shaky, jagged scrawl that barely resembled my name. But it was there. "There," Skylar said, triumphant. She pulled the folder away before I could finish. "Now the witnesses," she announced, turning to the room. This was the part of the plan that relied entirely on greed. The document required 2 additional signatures, co-signers. In Skylar's version, these signatures were for the trustees who would manage my assets. In my version, these signatures were an admission of guilt. "Darius, you first," she said, handing the pen to my son. Darius stepped up. He looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. He smelled of scotch and shame. He hesitated. "Do I really have to sign this, Sky?" he asked quietly. "Can't we just assume control without the paper?" "Sign it," Darius, Skylar snapped. "It is for the bank. Do you want the loan or not?" Darius looked at the folder. He didn't read the text. He was too drunk and too guilty to focus on the words. He just wanted it to be over. He bent down and scribbled his name on the line marked "Party of the First Part." He didn't know that legally, party of the first part in this specific document was defined as the debtor acknowledging fraudulent conversion of funds. "Good," Skylar said, taking the pen from him. She signed next. She signed with a flourish, a big looping signature that took up 2 lines. She was proud of it. She was signing her name to a $3 million property. She was signing her victory. She handed the folder to the notary. "Notarize it," she commanded, "and upload it immediately. I want the digital receipt before the cake is cut." Mrs. Gable. The notary took the folder. She adjusted her glasses. She was a meticulous woman. She pulled her stamp out of her bag. She pressed it onto the paper with a firm thud. Then she pulled out her portable scanner. I sat there in the wheelchair watching the little green light of the scanner move down the page. It was a mesmerizing sight. That light was digitizing their doom. Once that file hit the county server, it was immutable. It was a sworn affidavit. I watched the progress bar on her tablet. Scanning, 50%, 75%. Skylar was beaming. She wrapped her arm around Darius, whispering something in his ear. Probably about the vacation they would take. Probably about the new car she would buy. She looked at Camilla, who was standing by the window, and gave her a thumbs up. Camilla forced a smile, but she looked sick. The ghost story was still eating her alive. Scanning complete. Uploading to county clerk registry. The notary tapped the screen. "Sent," she said professionally. "It is filed, Mrs. Thorne. You are now the legal—" She paused. She frowned. She squinted at the screen, reading the confirmation header that popped up. "Excuse me," she said, confused. "What is it?" Skylar asked, impatient, reaching for the champagne. "The system is tagging this as a Class A confession," the notary said, tilting her head. "And a guardianship transfer. That can't be right. I thought this was a property deed." Skylar froze. The glass of champagne stopped halfway to her lips. "What did you say?" she whispered. The notary scrolled down on her tablet. Her face went pale. She looked at Skylar, then she looked at Darius, and finally she looked at me. "Mrs. Thorne, did you read the document before you signed it?" The notary asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Of course I read it," Skylar snapped, snatching the tablet from the woman's hands. "I wrote it. It is the deed." She looked at the screen. I watched her face. It was like watching a building implode in slow motion. First came the confusion, her eyebrows knit together, her lips parted. Then came the shock. Her eyes widened until the whites showed all around. Her breathing stopped. And then came the horror. This isn't my file," she stammered. "This says—" She looked up at me. I wasn't drooling anymore. I wasn't slumping. I was sitting upright, my good hand gripping the armrest of the wheelchair with a strength that turned my knuckles white. Skylar looked at the tablet again, reading the words she had just notarized with her own signature. "I, Skylar Thorne, hereby admit to the unauthorized transfer of $500,000. I acknowledge the debt. I surrender all claims to the property." "No," she screamed. It was a guttural animal sound. "No." She swiped at the tablet, trying to find a delete button, trying to undo the last 5 minutes of her life. "But the internet is written in ink, not pencil." "Darius." "What is it?" Darius asked, stumbling forward, grabbing her arm. "What is wrong?" She looked at him wild-eyed. "We signed a confession," she shrieked, throwing the tablet onto the floor. "We signed a confession. Darius." The room erupted into murmurs. The guests looked at each other, confused and alarmed. Aunt Bessie stood up, spilling her tea. Jerome stepped closer to the wheelchair, silently unlocking the brakes with his foot. He stood behind me, a silent guardian, ready for the violence that was about to follow. I took a deep breath. The air in the room felt different now. It didn't smell like champagne anymore. It smelled of justice. I looked at Skylar, who was hyperventilating, clutching her chest. I looked at Darius, who was staring at his hands as if they were covered in blood. They had walked into the trap. They had baited it themselves. And then, with a smile on their faces, they had snapped the mechanism shut on their own necks. The signature was dry. The file was uploaded. The cage was locked. And the man holding the key wasn't the fake doctor or the corrupt lawyer. It was the vegetable in the wheelchair. It was time to stand up. The notary's tablet clattered to the floor, but Skylar refused to hear the sound of her own destruction. Denial is a powerful anesthetic. It numbs the mind to reality, protecting the ego until the very last second. Skylar looked at the notary with a smile that was frozen in place, a rictus of panic and determination. She grabbed a crystal flute of champagne from the tray of a passing waiter. Her hand was shaking so badly the liquid splashed over the rim, staining her white glove, but she held it aloft like a torch. "Ignore her!" Skylar shouted, her voice cracking slightly before finding its artificial pitch. "The system is glitching. We will sort out the clerical errors on Monday. Right now, we are here to celebrate." She turned to the room of stunned guests, her eyes wide and manic. To Elijah, she announced, raising the glass higher. "To the man who built this family, to his health, to his legacy, and to the peace he so richly deserves." She looked down at me, expecting to see the drooling, broken old man she had manufactured. She expected me to sit there limp and confused, accepting her toast while she cemented my demise. She brought the glass to her lips, ready to drink to her victory, ready to swallow the lie she had forced everyone else to believe. But I didn't reach for my water. I reached for the armrests of the wheelchair. My hands, which she thought were weak, gripped the leather with the force of hydraulic clamps. I planted my feet on the floor. I felt the ground beneath me solid and true. The engineer in me checked the structural integrity of my legs. The muscles were tired, yes. The bone in my arm ached, yes. But the foundation was iron. I pushed. The wheelchair creaked, a sound of protest as I shifted my weight. Darius, who was standing next to me holding his own glass, noticed it first. He looked down. His eyes widened. "Pops," he whispered. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Skylar. I stood up. I didn't struggle. I didn't wobble. I rose from that chair like a mountain rising from the sea. I stood to my full height of 6 feet 2 inches. I straightened my spine. I adjusted the cuffs of my sweater vest. I let the silence of the room wash over me. Skylar froze. The glass stopped halfway to her mouth. She stared at me. Her brain couldn't process the image. In her narrative, I was a cripple. In her story, I was finished. Seeing me stand was like seeing a corpse walk out of a coffin. The room went deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that happens after a car crash before the screaming starts. Aunt Bessie covered her mouth. The business partners lowered their drinks. Everyone watched the miracle that wasn't a miracle, but a revelation. I took a step forward. My cane was leaning against the table, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't need it. I walked toward Skylar. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I reached out and took a glass of red wine from the table. I held it up to the light, inspecting the color. "Thank you, daughter-in-law," I said. My voice filled the room. It wasn't raspy. It wasn't weak. It was the deep, resonant baritone that had commanded respect on job sites for 40 years. It was the voice of a man who knows exactly who he is. Skylar took a step back, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. "Dad," she stammered, You are standing." I swirled the wine in the glass. I looked her dead in the eye. "I am standing, Skylar. I am talking. And I am thinking clearly." Which is a surprise, isn't it? Considering how much effort you put into making sure I couldn't do any of those things. I took a step closer, invading her personal space. "But I have to ask," I continued, my voice dropping to a low, lethal rumble. "Is this wine safe, Skylar? Does it have the special ingredient? Or is it just the coffee that gets the blue powder?" The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a sheet of paper. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a hook. What she whispered. What blue powder? I turned to the guests. I saw the confusion on their faces. They thought I was speaking in riddles. They thought maybe I was having a moment of clarity amidst the dementia. They didn't understand. So I had to show them. I looked at Jerome, who was standing by the television set in the corner. He had discarded his mask and his glasses. He stood with his arms crossed, a remote control in his hand. "Play it, Jerome," I commanded. Jerome pointed the remote at the 60-inch flat-screen TV that Skylar had set up to show a slideshow of my life. The screen flickered. The photo of me building the bridge vanished. A video appeared. The footage was grainy and slightly shaky, filmed from a low angle. The angle of a child hiding under a table. The room gasped. On the screen was the kitchen of this very house. The timestamp in the corner read 7:00 a.m. 2 weeks ago. Camilla walked into the frame. She looked disheveled, angry. She walked to the counter. She pulled a blue bag from her pocket. She opened the ceramic sugar jar, my special jar. I heard a collective intake of breath from the guests. On the screen, Camilla poured the blue powder into the sugar. She stirred it vigorously. Then she made a cup of coffee. She stirred 3 spoons of the tainted sugar into the mug. She smiled at the cup. It was a cruel, twisted smile. "Sleep tight, old man," the Camilla on the screen whispered. In the living room, the real Camilla let out a shriek. She covered her face with her hands, backing away toward the wall. "No," she screamed. "That is not real. That is a deep fake. He made it on the computer." But the video didn't stop. The screen flickered to a new clip. This one was filmed from inside a vent. The view was through a grate looking down into the living room. Skylar and Camilla were sitting on the sofa drinking wine. The audio was crystal clear. "How much longer?" Skylar asked on the screen. "He is taking too long to break." "Give it time," Camilla answered, swirling her glass. "The doctor said the mixture mimics advanced dementia. He will be a vegetable by the end of the month." "I just need him to sign the deed," Skylar said, slamming her hand on the cushion. "The buyer for the land is pushing me. 3 million cash, Camilla. We can't lose this deal because the old goat refuses to lose his mind." "Then we increase the dose," Camilla suggested. "Or we arrange an accident. Stairs are dangerous for old men." The video cut to black. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. I looked at Darius. He was staring at the blank screen, his mouth agape. He looked at Skylar. He looked at the woman he had married, the woman he had defended against his own father. "You planned it," he whispered. His voice was broken, a jagged shard of pain. "You planned the stairs." Skylar shook her head violently. "No, Darius. No. It is edited. It is a lie. He is manipulating you. Can't you see? He is the one who is crazy." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Am I crazy, Skylar?" I asked, walking toward the television. "Was I crazy when I found my wallet in the freezer where you hid it? Was I crazy when I found the fishing line in the trash can? Was I crazy when I recorded you paying your cousin Rob to impersonate a doctor?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the Nokia phone. I held it up. "I have audio recordings, Skylar. I have the financial records from the bank proving you stole $500,000. And now, thanks to your greed, I have a notarized confession signed by you and filed with the county." Skylar looked around the room. She was looking for an ally. She looked at her business partners, but they were already backing away, reaching for their coats. She looked at Aunt Bessie, who was staring at her with pure revulsion. She realized the walls were closing in. She realized the narrative had flipped. She wasn't the hero saving the estate. She was the villain caught in the spotlight. She turned to Darius, grabbing his lapels. "Darius, listen to me," she pleaded, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "I did it for us. We were drowning in debt, Darius. Your gambling debts, my business loans. We were going to lose everything. The house was the only way out. I was trying to save our future." Darius pulled her hands off his suit. He pushed her away, not violently, but with a finality that was more devastating than a blow. "You poisoned him," Darius said, tears streaming down his face. "You tried to kill my father." He looked at me. He saw the cast on my arm. He saw the weight I had lost. He saw the man who had raised him standing tall despite the torture he had endured. "Pops," Darius sobbed, dropping to his knees. "Oh God, Pops, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the poison." I looked down at my son. I saw the weakness in him. I saw the fear, but I also saw the horror. He was a fool, yes. He was a coward, yes. But he wasn't a killer. "I know you didn't know about the poison, son," I said softly. "But you knew about the money. You knew about the lies. You let her lead you by the nose because it was easier than standing up like a man." Skylar, seeing her hold on Darius evaporate, turned her rage on me. "You ruined everything," she screamed, lunging at me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hate. Her perfectly sprayed hair was coming loose. She looked like a banshee. "You selfish old man," she yelled, clawing at the air. "Why couldn't you just die? Why did you have to cling to this house? It is just wood and brick. It is dead, just like you should be." She rushed forward, her hands reaching for my throat. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Jerome stepped in. He moved with the speed of a striking cobra. He caught Skylar by the wrists before she could touch me. He twisted her arms behind her back in a smooth professional motion. "That is enough," Jerome growled, holding her fast. "Let me go," Skylar shrieked, kicking and thrashing. "You can't touch me. I will sue you. I will sue all of you." I walked up to her. I stood inches from her face. I looked into her wild eyes and I saw the fear behind the rage. "You can sue all you want, Skylar," I said, calm and quiet. "But it is hard to find a lawyer when you are broke. And you are broke. The confession you just signed admits to the debt. The bank freezes your assets in the morning. And the police. I look toward the front door. I think they are here for the rest of the party. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Blue and red lights began to flash through the front window, painting the walls in the colors of judgment. Camilla, who had been huddled in the corner, tried to run toward the kitchen door. I wouldn't go that way. Camilla, I called out without turning around. The back door is locked, and Jerome's team is waiting in the yard. Camilla collapsed onto the floor, sobbing into her hands. I looked back at the guests. They were silent, watching the tragedy unfold. The party is over, I announced. Please go home, and take your cake with you. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. As the guests shuffled out, heads bowed, whispering to each other, I looked at the wreckage of my family. My son on his knees weeping, my wife cowering in the corner, my daughter-in-law pinned by my best friend. It was a mess. It was a disaster. But for the first time in months, the air in the house felt clean. The poison was exposed. The rot was cut out. I walked over to the corner where Chloe was standing. She had put her teddy bear down. She was looking at me with awe. I knelt down, my bad knee protesting, but I ignored it. I looked her in the eye. "Did you get it on video, Grandpa?" she whispered. I tapped the side of my head. "We got it all, Agent Chloe. We got it all." The blue and red lights from the police cruisers pulsed through the front bay window, turning the birthday streamers into flickering ribbons of blood and bruised skin. The party was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Skylar was breathing hard, her chest heaving beneath her silk blouse. Jerome held her wrists firmly, but not cruelly. He was a professional, and he knew that a trapped animal is most dangerous right before the cage door locks. Skylar looked at the laptop connected to the television screen. The video of Camilla poisoning my coffee was paused on a freeze frame of her wicked smile. To Skylar, that laptop wasn't just a computer, it was the smoking gun. It was the end of her career, her reputation, and her freedom. In a burst of hysterical strength, she twisted her body violently. She wasn't trying to hit Jerome. She was trying to get to the table. She lunged, screaming a high-pitched sound of pure panic, reaching for the HDMI cable, reaching for the device, as if destroying the screen would destroy the truth. "Delete it," she shrieked, her fingernails clawing at the air inches from the keyboard. "Delete it, you old fraud. You can't show this. It is illegal surveillance. It is inadmissible." Jerome didn't budge. He simply shifted his weight, blocking her path with his broad shoulders. He looked at me, waiting for the order. "Let her go, Jerome," I said, my voice cutting through her screams. Jerome released her. Skylar stumbled forward, crashing into the table. She grabbed the laptop. She didn't type. She lifted it over her head and smashed it onto the hardwood floor. Plastic shattered. Keys flew across the room like shrapnel. She stomped on it, grinding her expensive heel into the motherboard, screaming with every impact. There she panted, looking up at me wild-eyed and triumphant. "It is gone. Your evidence is gone. Now it is just your word against mine. And who are they going to believe, Elijah? A senile old man who wets the bed, or a respected real estate agent?" I looked at the broken plastic on the floor. I looked at her sweating face. I didn't get angry. I felt a profound sense of pity. She was so confident in her destruction that she forgot how the world worked. "Skylar," I said softly, leaning on my cane, not for support, but for emphasis. "You really don't understand technology, do you?" She froze. "That video isn't on the laptop," I explained. "It is in the cloud. It was uploaded to 3 secure servers the moment Chloe recorded it. It was emailed to the district attorney 10 minutes ago, and it was sent to every member of the licensing board for the State Real Estate Commission." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And as for the legality, I continued walking closer to her. "You are in my house, Skylar. I consented to the recording. But that is not your biggest problem right now." I pointed to the blue folder lying on the table, the one she had signed with such arrogance just moments ago. "Your biggest problem is that." She looked at the folder. She looked at the notary, who was cowering by the bookshelf, clutching her bag. I picked up the folder. I opened it to the page with her signature. The ink was still fresh. "You thought you were signing a deed transfer," I said, reading from the document. "You thought you were stealing a $3 million asset, but you didn't read the header." I turned the document so she could see it. "This is a confession of judgment." I said, my voice hard as steel. "In this document, you and Darius admit to the unauthorized withdrawal of $500,000 from my retirement account. You admit that this money was not a gift but a fraudulent conversion, and you agree to repay the full amount plus interest within 24 hours. Skylar shook her head, backing away. I didn't know. That is fraud. You tricked me. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I tricked you, I asked. You tried to gaslight me into an asylum, Skylar. You poisoned my coffee. You rigged my stairs, and you call this fraud. No, this is a contract, and you signed it. I flipped to the next page. And here is the kicker, I said. Paragraph 4. Failure to repay the debt within the allotted time will result in the immediate forfeiture of all personal assets held by Skylark Holdings and a voluntary surrender to law enforcement for charges of elder abuse and grand larceny. Skylar looked at Darius. She looked at her husband, hoping he would fix this, hoping he would stand up and be the man she had manipulated. Darius, do something, she screamed, hitting him on the chest. Tell him we won't pay. Tell him it is a lie. Darius was kneeling on the floor. He looked at the broken laptop. He looked at the police lights flashing outside. He looked at his father. He didn't look at Skylar. It is over, Sky, Darius whispered. His voice was hollow. He stopped fighting. He stopped lying. The weight of what he had done had finally crushed him. Skylar backed away from him. You coward, she spat. You useless coward. The front door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, followed by a detective in a cheap suit. They looked around the room, taking in the scene. The broken computer, the crying woman, the old man standing tall. Mr. Thorne, the detective asked, looking at me. I am Elijah Thorne, I said. We received a digital packet regarding an ongoing domestic situation, the detective said, eyeing Skylar. And we have a warrant for the arrest of a Camilla Thorne and a Skylar Thorne. Skylar turned to run. It was a reflex, a desperate animal instinct. She bolted toward the hallway, toward the back door. Jerome tripped her. He didn't tackle her. He just extended his foot. Skylar sprawled onto the floor, her expensive blouse tearing at the shoulder. The officers were on her in seconds. Get off me, she screamed, kicking and biting. Do you know who I am? I own this town. I will have your badges. They cuffed her hands behind her back. The click of the metal was the period at the end of her sentence. They pulled her up. Her hair was in her face. Her makeup was smeared. She looked at me with pure hatred. You will rot in hell, Elijah, she hissed as they dragged her out. I am already in hell, Skylar, I said calmly. I have been living in it for 3 months. Today, I am walking out. They took her away. The screaming faded as the heavy oak door closed. The room was quiet again. Camilla had been escorted out the back door by other officers, weeping silently. Only Darius remained. He was still on his knees. He hadn't moved. He was staring at the spot on the floor where the champagne glass had shattered earlier. He looked small. He looked like a boy who had broken a window and was waiting for the punishment. I walked over to him. The sound of my cane tapping on the floor was the only noise in the room. Darius, I said. He flinched. He looked up slowly. His face was a map of misery. His eyes were red, swollen, and filled with a pain that was almost physical. Pops, he choked out. He reached out, trying to grab the hem of my pants. I stepped back. Just an inch. But that inch was a chasm. Pops, please, he sobbed. I am sorry. I swear to God I am sorry. She told me it was for the best. She said you were sick. She said we were just protecting the money. You signed the check, Darius. I said, my voice devoid of warmth. You walked into the bank, you typed the code, you authorized the transfer. I didn't know about the poison, he pleaded. I didn't know she was hurting you. I thought we were in trouble. The debts, Pops. I was scared. You were scared, I repeated. I looked down at him. I remembered teaching him how to ride a bike. I remembered holding him when he scraped his knee. I remembered telling him that a man is defined not by his mistakes, but by how he fixes them. But some things cannot be fixed. I was scared too, Darius, I said. I was scared when my mind started to slip. I was scared when I couldn't remember the date. I was scared when I fell down those stairs and felt my bones snap. But do you know what scared me the most? He shook his head, tears dripping off his chin. It wasn't the pain, I said. It wasn't the fear of dying. It was looking into my son's eyes and seeing nothing. No love, no loyalty, just calculation. "Pops, I am your son," he whispered. "I am your flesh and blood. You can't send me to jail. Please. I will pay it back. I will work. I will do anything." I looked at the blue folder on the table, the confession. "You are right," I said. "You are my son. And that is why this hurts more than any broken bone." I sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of 75 years. "I can forgive stupidity, Darius. I can forgive you for being weak. I can forgive you for gambling your money away. I can even forgive you for marrying a wolf, because she fooled me too." Darius looked up, hope flickering in his eyes, but I continued, my voice hardening, turning into granite. "I cannot forgive betrayal. You watched them humiliate me. You watched them starve me. You watched them treat me like a dog in my own house. And you didn't stand up. You didn't speak. You signed the papers." I turned away from him. "The police are waiting, Darius." He wailed, a sound of pure despair. "Pops, no." "You made your choice, son," I said, walking toward the corner where Chloe was waiting. "You chose her. You chose the easy way, and now you have to live with it." I picked up Chloe. She buried her face in my neck, holding me tight. Jerome walked over and put a hand on Darius's shoulder. "Come on, Darius," Jerome said gently. "Don't make them drag you. Stand up." I heard the shuffle of feet. I heard the front door open again. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I might break. And I had to be strong, not for me, but for the little girl in my arms, who was the only part of my family worth saving. The dominoes had fallen. The board was cleared. And as the silence returned to my house, I realized that victory doesn't taste sweet. It tastes like ashes. But at least the air was clean. The blue lights outside were still flashing, painting the living room walls in a rhythm of violence and justice, but the screaming had stopped. Skylar had been dragged out, kicking and spitting her career, and her arrogance shattered on the floor like the laptop she destroyed. Darius had walked out quietly, a broken man, his head hung low in a shame that would likely outlive him. The house was quieter now, but it wasn't empty. Camilla was still there. She sat on the tufted velvet ottoman in the corner. She wasn't crying anymore. She had switched tactics. She was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, looking up at the remaining police officers with the wide, trembling eyes of a survivor. She was playing the role of the victim, the coerced wife, the woman who had been bullied by her stepdaughter and husband into staying silent. "Officer," she whimpered as a detective walked past. "Please, you have to understand. I was terrified of Skylar. She threatened me. She said if I didn't help with the coffee, she would hurt Elijah. I only did what I had to do to survive." The detective stopped. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many lies to be charmed by a performance. He looked down at her. He didn't speak. He just stared. Camilla mistook his silence for sympathy. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, trying to regain her composure. "I can pack a bag," she said quickly. "I will go to a hotel. I will stay available for questioning, of course. I just want to leave this house. It has so many bad memories." She took a step toward the stairs. "Sit down, Mrs. Thorne," the detective said. His voice was flat. Camilla froze. She turned around, giving him a confused smile. "Excuse me," she asked. "I am not under arrest, officer. My husband, Elijah, he knows I was a victim here." She looked at me. She tried to catch my eye, tried to summon the connection we had pretended to have for 6 months. "Tell him, Elijah," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Tell him how I took care of you. Tell him I loved you." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with, the woman I had trusted with my life, and I felt a coldness in my chest that was absolute. Jerome stepped out from the kitchen. He was holding a thick manila envelope. He walked over to the detective and handed it to him. "This is the file from Ohio," Jerome said, "and the addendum from Pennsylvania." Camilla went still. It wasn't the stillness of calm. It was the stillness of a deer hearing the twig snap before the bullet strikes. "What Ohio?" she whispered. "I haven't been to Ohio in years." The detective opened the file. He pulled out a photograph. He held it up. "Do you know this man, ma'am?" the detective asked. Camilla stared at the photo. Her face, which had been flushed with fake tears, turned the color of ash. I don't know him," she stammered. That is funny, the detective said, looking at the back of the photo, because his death certificate lists his wife as Camilla Vance. That was your name before you changed it to Thorne, right? Camilla didn't answer. She started to back away, looking for an exit, looking for a window, looking for anything. His name was Marcus Vance, the detective continued reading from the file. He died 7 years ago in Columbus. Kidney failure, sudden onset. He was 42 years old, a healthy man who suddenly forgot how to filter toxins. He was sick, Camilla shouted, her voice cracking. He had a condition. It was tragic. Tragic indeed, the detective said, flipping the page, especially since he was cremated 24 hours after death. No autopsy. And his life insurance policy of $200,000 was paid out to you 3 weeks later. That proves nothing, Camilla hissed. People die. It happens. True, the detective agreed. People die. But then there was David. He pulled out another photo. David Miller. Pittsburgh. 5 years ago. He was older. 55. He owned a hardware store. He died of, let me check. Ah, yes. Kidney failure. Complications from a sudden flu. Also cremated. Also insured. This time for $300,000. Camilla hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. The corner she had backed herself into was made of concrete and facts. Jerome walked over to her. He loomed over her, his face hard. We found the pattern, Camilla, Jerome said. You like the sweet stuff, don't you? Ethylene glycol, antifreeze. You mix it with Gatorade, you mix it with soda, or in Elijah's case, you mix it with raw sugar and mask the taste with strong coffee. No! She screamed, shaking her head violently. No! It was just sedatives. Skylar told me to use sedatives, to make him confused, to get the house. I didn't want to kill him. The detective stepped in close. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The sound of the metal ratchet was loud in the silent room. We tested the residue in the sugar jar, Mrs. Thorne, the detective said. The lab rush order just came back. It wasn't just Valium. There were traces of oxalate crystals, the kind that form when antifreeze breaks down in the system. You weren't just making him sleepy. You were slowly shutting down his organs. He grabbed her wrist. He spun her around. Camilla Vance Thorne, you are under arrest for the murders of Marcus Vance and David Miller and the attempted murder of Elijah Thorne. She didn't fight. She didn't scream like Skylar. When the cuffs clicked shut, she just slumped. The air went out of her. The performance ended. The grieving widow, the devoted wife, the victim, they all vanished. And what was left was something terrifying. She looked up at me. Her eyes were dead. There was no emotion in them, no fear, no regret, just a cold, flat emptiness. A shark looking at a meal that got away. You were taking too long, she said quietly. Her voice was steady. Marcus went fast. David went fast. But you stubborn old man, you wouldn't drink enough. You kept spilling it. I walked over to her, leaning on my cane. I looked at the woman who had slept beside me for months, planning my funeral while I dreamed. I didn't spill it, Camilla, I said softly. I poured it into the plant. She blinked. The plant, she repeated. The snake plant by the bed, I said. You should have checked the soil. It died 3 days ago, turned brown and withered. That was you, Camilla. That was your love. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound devoid of humor. I should have just used the stairs, she muttered. I should have pushed you instead of using the line. Why, I asked. It wasn't a question of method, it was a question of soul. Why did you do it? I gave you everything. I gave you a home. I gave you kindness. She looked at me with genuine confusion, as if I were speaking a foreign language. You were boring Elijah, she said simply. You and your bridges, you and your stories about the war. You were just a wallet with a pulse, and I was tired of waiting for the pulse to stop. The detective pulled her arm. Let's go. She started to walk, then she stopped. She looked at Chloe, who was standing by the kitchen door, holding my hand. You, she whispered, looking at the little girl. The little spy. I stepped in front of Chloe, shielding her from the gaze of the monster. Don't look at her, I growled. You don't get to look at her. Camilla sneered. She should be careful, Grandpa. Girls who see too much tend to have accidents. Jerome stepped forward, his fists clenched, but the detective shoved Camilla toward the door. Move it, he barked. They dragged her out. She didn't struggle. She walked with her head high, preserving her dignity, even as she lost her freedom. I watched her go. I watched the woman I thought I loved disappear into the back of a police cruiser. I felt a heavy weight settle in my stomach. It wasn't heartbreak. Heartbreak implies loss. This was nausea. It was the sickness of realizing you have been sleeping with a viper. Jerome walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "She is gone, Pops," he said. "For good. Pennsylvania has the death penalty. Ohio has life without parole. She is never seeing the sun again." I nodded slowly. I looked at my broken arm. I looked at the spot on the stairs where I had fallen. I realized how close I had come. If Chloe hadn't been under the bed, if I had drunk that coffee one more time, I would be just another file in a cabinet, another old man who died of natural causes, another payout. I sat down on the sofa. My legs suddenly felt weak. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the exhaustion of survival. Chloe climbed up next to me. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head on my shoulder. I wrapped my good arm around her. I held her tight. I held onto the only thing in this world that was real. "You saved me," I whispered into her hair. "You know that, right? You saved my life." She looked up at me. Her big brown eyes were serious. "She was a bad witch, Grandpa," she said. "Yes, baby," I said. "She was. But we got her," she said, fierce and proud. "We got them all." I looked around the empty living room. The birthday banner was sagging. The cake was uncut. The champagne was warm. My family was gone. My son was in handcuffs. My wife was a serial killer. But the house was still standing. The foundation was cracked, but it held. I closed my eyes and let out a long, slow breath. "Jerome," I said, not opening my eyes. "Yeah, Pops. Lock the door. And order a pizza. I am starving." "And Jerome?" "Yeah, make sure it is pepperoni, and make sure nobody touches it but you." Jerome laughed, a real warm sound that chased the shadows away. "You got it, Pops. Pepperoni it is." I sat there in the quiet, holding my granddaughter, listening to the rain start to fall outside, washing away the tracks of the police cars, washing away the lies. I was alive, and for tonight, that was enough. The silence that follows a police raid is heavy. It does not feel like peace. It feels like a vacuum. It feels like the air has been sucked out of the room, leaving only the dust motes dancing in the beams of the flashlights that have long since faded. The blue and red strobe lights that had painted my living room walls with the colors of violence were gone. The neighbors who had peered through their blinds, witnessing the fall of the Thorne dynasty, had turned off their lights and gone back to their safe, uncomplicated lives. I sat in the middle of the living room on the sofa that still smelled faintly of the cheap champagne Skylar had spilled. The house was empty. For the first time in 40 years, it felt truly empty. Camilla was gone, taken to a holding cell where she would trade her silk robes for an orange jumpsuit. Skylar was gone, screaming threats and lawsuits all the way to the cruiser. And Darius, my son, he was gone too. I looked at the spot on the rug where he had knelt. I could still see the indentation of his knees. I could still hear the sound of his weeping. Victory, they call it. In the movies, when the bad guys go to jail, the music swells and the hero smiles. But in real life, victory tastes like ash. I had won the war. I had saved my life. I had saved my fortune. But I had lost my son. The next morning, the sun came up just like it always does, indifferent to the tragedies of men. I didn't sleep. I spent the night sitting in the chair watching Chloe sleep. She tossed and turned, whimpering in her dreams, fighting monsters I couldn't see. At 9 o'clock, Jerome arrived. He wasn't wearing his scrubs or his disguise. He was wearing a suit. He brought fresh coffee and a stack of legal documents thick enough to choke a horse. "We have news, Pops," Jerome said, pouring me a cup. "Real coffee this time, black and bitter." "Tell me," I said, taking the cup with my good hand. "The arraignment was this morning," Jerome said, sitting opposite me. "The district attorney isn't playing games. With the video evidence and the confession Skylar signed, she is looking at 20 years minimum. Fraud, elder abuse, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder." "And Camilla?" I asked. Jerome paused. "Camilla is being extradited to Ohio tonight. The homicide detectives there opened the cold case on her first husband. They found the antifreeze purchase records from 7 years ago. She kept the receipt, Elijah. Can you believe that? She kept it in a scrapbook. She is never getting out." I nodded slowly. The engineer in me appreciated the efficiency of justice, but the father in me was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And Darius, I whispered. Jerome sighed. He put his mug down. Darius pleaded guilty, Elijah. To everything. The fraud, the theft, the negligence. His lawyer tried to get him to fight it, to claim he was coerced by Schuyler, but Darius refused. He told the judge he did it. He told the judge he deserved it. I closed my eyes. My boy. At least in the end he found a shred of integrity. He stopped running. And the custody hearing, I asked, dreading the answer. It was short, Jerome said softly. The state moved to place Chloe in foster care immediately, pending an investigation. My heart stopped. Foster care. Strangers. A system that would chew her up and spit her out. No, I said, standing up, ignoring the pain in my broken arm. No, she stays here. Sit down, Pops, Jerome said, raising a hand. I said they moved to do it, but they didn't succeed. He pulled a document from his briefcase. It had a gold seal on it. Darius signed the voluntary termination of parental rights, Jerome said. He did it this morning in his cell. He signed full legal and physical custody over to you. He wrote a letter to the judge, Elijah. He said, you are the only man strong enough to protect her from the wolves, including himself. I took the paper. I looked at Darius's signature. It was shaky, stained with a teardrop that had dried on the ink. It was the last gift he could give me, and the last gift he could give his daughter. He set her free. I sat back down, clutching the paper to my chest. I felt a wave of grief wash over me, so powerful I thought I might drown. I had lost him, not to death, but to his own weakness. But in losing him, I had gained her. We need to secure this, Jerome, I said, my voice hardening. I need to make sure Schuyler can never touch her. I need to make sure that even if Darius gets out in 10 years, he can't come back and undo this. Jerome nodded. I brought the trust papers. We are going to lock this down tighter than Fort Knox. We spent the afternoon working. I didn't hire a fancy firm. I used Jerome's lawyer, a man who worked out of a strip mall but knew the law better than the partners at Schuyler's firm. We drafted an irrevocable trust. I looked at the deed to the house Sarah and I had built, the house Schuyler had tried to sell for cryptocurrency. We are changing the name, I said, picking up a pen. Jerome looked up. What do you mean? It is not the Thorne Estate anymore, I said. That name is tainted. It has too much blood on it. I crossed out the header on the deed. I wrote in bold block letters, Chloe's Haven. This house, I said, pointing to the paper, is now the sole property of the Chloe Thorne Trust. I am the trustee until my death. Upon my death, it passes to her. It cannot be sold. It cannot be leveraged. It cannot be seized by creditors. It is hers, forever. And the money Jerome asked, the remaining savings, the pension, all of it, I said, every cent, it goes into the trust. I will live on my Social Security. It is enough for me. But Chloe, she will go to college. She will travel. She will have the life her father threw away. I signed the papers. My signature was strong. It was the signature of a builder laying the final cornerstone. That evening I walked through the house. I had a trash bag in my hand. I went into the kitchen. I opened the cabinet. I took out the blue ceramic sugar jar, the jar Sarah had loved, the jar Camilla had turned into a weapon. I didn't wash it. I didn't save it. I threw it in the bag. The sound of the ceramic shattering was satisfying. I went into the bathroom. I took the expensive lotions Camilla had left. Trash. I went into the guest room where Schuyler had stayed. I stripped the sheets. Trash. I was purging the infection. I was scrubbing the walls of my life. I walked into the sunroom. The snake plant, the one I had poured the poisoned coffee into, was brown and withered in the corner. It had died so I could live. I picked up the heavy pot. I carried it out to the backyard. I dug a hole near the fence. I buried the plant. I buried the poison. When I came back inside, Chloe was sitting at the kitchen table. She was drawing. She had found a box of crayons. She was drawing a picture of a house. It had a red roof and a big sun in the corner. And in front of the house there were two stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands. She looked up at me. "Where is Daddy?" she asked. It was the question I had been dreading. I could have lied. I could have told her he was on a trip. I could have told her he was working. That is what parents usually do to protect their children. But lies were what got us here. Lies were the poison that almost killed us. I sat down next to her. I took her small hand in mine. "Daddy did something bad, Chloe," I said gently. "He made some mistakes. Big mistakes. And when grown-ups make big mistakes, sometimes they have to go away for a while to learn how to be good again. Is he in timeout? She asked, her eyes wide. Yes, baby, I said. A very long time out. Is he coming back? I looked at the drawing. I looked at the two stick figures. Not for a long time, I said. But he did one good thing before he left. He asked me to take care of you. He said, I am your dad now. Is that okay? She thought about it. She looked at my broken arm in the cast. She looked at the cane leaning against the table. You are old, Grandpa, she said seriously. Can you take care of me? I laughed. It was a rusty sound, but it was real. I am old, Chloe. I am 75. My bones are brittle and I move slow. But I am an engineer, and engineers build things to last. I tapped the table. I promise you this, Chloe. I will live long enough to see you graduate. I will live long enough to walk you down the aisle. I will live long enough to make sure you never have to be afraid in your own house again. I am not going anywhere. She smiled. She pushed the drawing toward me. This is us, she said. In the fortress. Yes, I said. Chloe's haven. That night I tucked her into her bed. I checked the windows. I checked the locks. I checked the smoke detectors. I checked everything twice. Then I went downstairs to my study. I didn't sleep in the hospital bed. I had Jerome haul it out to the curb. I slept in my leather armchair with a blanket over my legs and a baseball bat next to my side. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with a new purpose. I had lost my past. My wife was a lie. My son was a failure. My career was a memory. But I had a future. She was sleeping upstairs, dreaming of stick figures and sunshine, and for the first time in 3 months I wasn't afraid to close my eyes. Because I knew that when I woke up the coffee would be just coffee and the house would still be standing. I am Elijah Thorne. I am a builder, and I had just started my most important project. The storm had finally passed, leaving the air scrubbed clean and smelling of wet earth and pine needles. It was Sunday morning. A real Sunday this time, not a day fabricated by gaslighting and lies. I sat on the front porch of the house that was no longer the Thorne estate, but Chloe's haven. The rocking chair creaked beneath me, a familiar rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the house itself. My left arm was still in a cast, resting heavily on a pillow, but my right hand was steady, wrapped around a ceramic mug. It wasn't coffee. I was done with coffee. I didn't think I could ever smell a roasted bean again without tasting the phantom bitterness of betrayal. It was hot cocoa, and I had made it myself. I had stood in the kitchen with Chloe, teaching her the ratios. 2 spoons of cocoa powder, 1 spoon of sugar, a pinch of cinnamon, and milk. Real milk. Not the watered-down slurry Camilla used to force-feed me. We had watched the milk heat up on the stove, bubbling at the edges. We had stirred it together, watching the brown swirl into the white until it was rich and uniform. It was a simple chemistry experiment, but to me, it felt like a religious ritual. We were reclaiming the kitchen. We were reclaiming the act of nourishment. Chloe sat in the rocker next to me. Her feet didn't touch the floor. She swung her legs back and forth, humming a tune she had learned in school. She held her mug with both hands, blowing on the steam. She looked small against the backdrop of the large house, but she didn't look afraid anymore. The shadows that had lived under her eyes for months were starting to fade, replaced by the resilience of childhood. It is hot, Grandpa, she said, taking a cautious sip. Sip it slow, baby, I said. Good things take time. You can't rush the heat. She nodded, mimicking my posture. She looked out at the lawn where the morning sun was drying the dew. Are they ever coming back? She asked quietly. She didn't look at me. She looked at the driveway, the place where the police cars had taken her parents away. No, Chloe, I said, my voice firm but gentle. They are not coming back, not for a very long time. And even if they do, the locks are changed. The fence is higher, and I am right here. She thought about this for a moment. She processed the permanency of it. I miss Daddy sometimes, she whispered. Is that bad? He stole your money, but I still miss him. I reached out and rested my hand on her head, feeling the soft curls. It is not bad to miss him, Chloe. You have a good heart, a heart that loves even when it is hurt. That makes you stronger than him. It makes you stronger than all of them. Your daddy. He got lost. He forgot what mattered. But you don't have to forget him. You just have to remember that you are safe now. I looked out at the street. A car drove by slowly, the driver looking at the house. Probably a neighbor curious about the scandal. curious about the old man who had survived the Black Widow. Let them look. Let them see that the lights are on and the flag is flying. They underestimated me, Chloe, I said, half to her and half to the wind. Who Grandpa, Camilla, Skylar, even your dad? They looked at my gray hair and they saw a tombstone. They looked at my limp and they saw weakness. They thought that because I moved slow, my mind was slow too. I took a sip of the cocoa. The cinnamon warmed my chest. That is the mistake the world makes with old people. They think we are obsolete. They think we are just taking up space waiting to die. They forget that we are the ones who built the roads they drive on. We are the ones who poured the foundations they stand on. We have survived wars and recessions and heartbreaks that would crush them. I looked at my hand, the one that had signed the confession, the one that had held the phone under the mattress. Memory fades, Chloe. Sometimes I forget where I put my keys. Sometimes I forget the name of a movie, but instinct does not fade. The feeling in your gut that tells you a beam is about to crack or a storm is coming. That never goes away. It just gets sharper. I turned to look at her. She was watching me, her eyes wide and intelligent. And they made another mistake, I said. A bigger one. What was that, she asked. They didn't look under the bed. She smiled a small secret smile that belonged only to us. They thought you were just a kid, I continued. They thought you were playing with dolls. They didn't know that children see everything. Adults filter the world. We tell ourselves lies to make life easier. We pretend the marriage is happy. We pretend the debt isn't real. But kids just see the truth. You saw the powder. You saw the hate. And you didn't look away. You were my partner, Grandpa, she said, proud. Operation Bluebird. That is right. You were the best partner a man could ask for. I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes for a moment, listening to the birds singing in the oak tree. The same oak tree Skylar claimed I was screaming at. It stood tall and majestic, its roots deep in the earth. It had weathered storms for 100 years. It didn't scream. It endured. I am like that tree, I thought. My bark is rough, my branches are brittle, but my roots go down to the bedrock. Grandpa Chloe asked, breaking my reverie. Yeah, kiddo, what are we going to do now? With just us. I opened my eyes. I looked at the vast estate that was now ours. It was too big for two people, really, but we would fill it. We are going to live, I said. We are going to plant a new garden where the snake plant used to be. We are going to paint the kitchen a color that isn't gray, maybe yellow, like the sun. And I am going to teach you things. What things? I am going to teach you how to build a bridge, I said. I am going to teach you how to mix concrete so it never cracks. I am going to teach you how to read a blueprint. And most importantly, I am going to teach you how to spot a liar from a mile away, she giggled. Can we get a dog, a big one, to watch the door? I laughed. A big dog. Maybe a German Shepherd or a Rottweiler. Someone to help Jerome watch the perimeter. Yes, I said. We can get a dog. But you have to feed him. Deal, she said, extending her small hand. I shook it. Her grip was firm. She was a thorn. A real thorn. Deal. We finished our cocoa in silence, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. The terror of the last few months felt like a nightmare that was slowly dissolving in the light of day. I touched the phone in my pocket. I didn't need to hide it anymore. I didn't need to record my own life to prove I was living it. I looked at Chloe one last time. She was the legacy, not the money, not the house, not the awards on the wall. This little girl who had crawled through the dark to bring me a lifeline was the only thing I was leaving behind that mattered. Skylar wanted to invest in cryptocurrency. She wanted magic money. She didn't understand that the only investment that yields a guaranteed return is love. She tried to bankrupt me, but she ended up making me the richest man in the world. I am Elijah Thorne. I am 75 years old. I have a broken arm and a broken heart, but my spirit is iron. And as I sit here on this porch with my granddaughter, I know one thing for certain. The wolves came, they huffed and they puffed, but they couldn't blow this house down, because the man inside wasn't sleeping. He was just waiting for the right moment to open the door. Trust is a fragile vessel. Once broken, it can never be truly repaired, only replaced. My son and his wife mistook my silence for senility and my kindness for weakness. They forgot that the man who built the foundation of their lives knows exactly where the structural weaknesses lie. Greed blinds the young to the wisdom of the old. In the end, family isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty. While my own son plotted my demise, my granddaughter saved my life. Use your eyes to see the truth, not your heart to excuse the betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story. If you believe that we must protect our elders and listen to our children, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I want to know, have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's build a community of survivors. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay strong, and remember, the walls have ears, but the truth always finds a voice.